Chapter 1173, Who You Used to Be. Chapter 1173, Who You Used to Be, _. Xian Shan's blood bones turned into bone powder and entered Hassan's god body. Hassan's broken soul was gathered slowly. Corpse chi swirled around him and gave people a desperate, scary feeling. It was like a corpse or a dead person slowly waking up. Taking things seriously, after the training in the God Clan's death trap that year, Hassan wasn't pure anymore. His soul has been fused with Xian Shan's and it gave Hassan the purest strong will. He and Xian Shan's wild fixation have fused. The ring spirit's voice didn't have any emotion, as if it was just narrating some simple facts. Besides Death Power Upanishad, Xian Shan had mastered using the corpse chi that Frederick controls, the ring spirit narrated. The Charteris family had only urged the brutal death power in Xian Shan's skeleton. They couldn't force the other energy of his. Today, this energy and the bone powder have entered Hassan's body. When he wakes up, he will be much stronger. So he's alive or dead? Is he the member of the God Clan or the Corpse Clan? Shi Yang was surprised. He's still Hassan. After the death energy in Xian Shan's skeleton is used up, the corpse chi will appear. Of course, the dead will become corpses. However, death and corpse chi energy have something in connection. Only Xian Shan of the Bloodthirsty understood this essence that year. Because of that, he became a foreign race. That's how he was eligible to keep one part of my memory. The ring spirit didn't make it clear. After Hassan wakes up, the corpse chi will fill him. He can use the burning purgatory Upanishad to burn corpse chi to generate his life magnetic field. It will be the same with what he used to have. The reason why I chose Hassan that year was because he's a member of the Charteris family that cultivated burning purgatory power Upanishad. I can't say what would be created when the death, corpse chi, and burning purgatory power Upanishads are combined. However, I had chosen Hassan as the successor of the Bloodthirstis master at that time to take care and nurture. The eye that the ring spirit had mentioned was the third party of the ring's memory staying in Hassan's bloodbone. If you, a better option, hadn't appeared, Hassan would have become my master and the successor of the bloodthirsty force. The reason why I had to divide into 3 parts was to prepare for every case. We don't want to hang me on only one tree. It turns out that we've made a right decision. Besides Xian, he who didn't find his luck, Xian Shan had succeeded in finding Hassan. Although he wasn't the best choice because of his soul and fate, we still have another option. I don't quite understand, Shi Yang shook his head. According to the ring spirit, Hassan was a member of the God Clan, but he had fused with the crazy will. And as Shi Yang'd known, he was the new star of the God Clan. Shi Yang had fought with Hassan, so he knew how intimidating Hassan was. This young man was one of the rarest terrifying enemies Shi Yang had ever encountered in his life. If he didn't have the blood sword, which had boosted his power, it was hard to say who would be killed. If the ring spirit had considered Hassan a chosen one, it must have keen eyes. Hassan was eligible. But why did the ring spirit say that Shi Yang was the best choice? When the death power Upanishad, the corpse chi power Upanishad, and the burning purgatory power Upanishad combined, even the ring spirit was terrified. When the ring spirit's memory was complete and could impart Hassan the devouring power Upanishad of the bloodthirsty force, wouldn't he become invincible? Who could subdue him then? But why did the ring spirit choose him? Although he was always self-confident, when he faced Hassan and got to know his power, Shi Yang still felt pretty strange. The inheritance of the Bloodthirstis master can be imparted to only the members of the 4 great races and in the ancient continent, the ring spirit continued calmly. Hassan is a god warrior and you have immortal demon blood. You guys are the same in this aspect. You were born in Grace Mainland and Hassan was born in ancient God continent. It's not really different. However, there's one thing that distinguishes you two. It's also the reason why you are the successor of the Bloodthirstis master. Please tell me, asked Shi Yang earnestly. Although you have the immortal demon blood in your body, your soul is, the ring spirit paused for a while, you know how you came here better than anybody else. Who you used to be before you had entered this body. Shi Yang was shaken. He looked panic-stricken. Of course, he knew who he used to be and why he had descended to this world. However, that year, He was an extreme athlete. He didn't belong in this universe. He thought that he was dead in an adventure, his soul sinking. When he woke up, he found himself inside a dark cave of Grace Mainland in the body of another Shiyang. He had become another man from that day. Shiyang thought that no one in this world could know this secret of his. He had never thought that when the three memory parts of the ring spirit reunited, it could expose him quickly and make him feel naked like that. It scared him out of his wits. Don't worry. We've chosen you. Laro Luo and I had exerted our efforts. We didn't regret using the origin of Grace Mainland to bring you here from another universe. Of course, we won't hurt you. If we hadn't used the origin, Grace Mainland wouldn't have drained its energy that fast. Since he had to guide you here from another universe, Laro Luo was dead because of his exhausted energy, said the ring spirit indifferently. After the ring spirit had its full memory, it didn't conceal information anymore. It began to explain to Shiyang, the reason why you were the best choice and the reason why you were chosen by the bloodthirsty force is that your soul doesn't belong in this universe. It's the main reason why Harson could never be compared to you. Pausing for a while, the ring spirit continued, since your soul doesn't belong in this universe, it means that rules and principles of this universe can't bind you. Because your soul wasn't born in this universe, you are able to cross any barriers of this world. What our master couldn't do that year, you could do it all. It's because you can break all the rules and principles. It's the reason why Harson couldn't be compared to you. His soul was born in this universe. His soul was shrouded by the principles of the cosmos that nothing could free him. The blood vein ring slipped on his finger once again and emitted immense red light. He stroked the ring while his soul listened to the ring spirit. He stood there in a daze and said nothing for a long time. Until now, he had thought that his soul coming to Grace Mainland was just something coincidental or unexpected. Today, he had finally figured out that the ring spirit and Laro Luo had used the power of Grace Mainland's origin to activate something that he would never be able to understand to bring him into the body of a warrior who belonged to one of the four great races, the one with the immortal demon blood. None of these was coincidental. Someone had plotted for this. Everything was planned. Shiyang was so astounded. My memory hasn't fully combined yet. I need more time. I'll be idle for the time being. After you get into Desolate, I'll tell you what to do. The ring spirit's voice faded away. You don't need to care about Harson. The mark on his head will fade away. It will tell him what has happened. He can still be a member of his Charteris family. He needs time to clear his head and know what he got. The God clan won't spare his life and he won't be willing to be under someone's control. He's predestined to be our warrior. The ring spirit's voice grew faint. The halo of the blood vein ring dimmed. Eventually, it quieted down. Oddly enough, the corpse chi in Harson's body was burning. After the corpse chi burned, it changed and generated vitality in his body, giving people the feeling of something becoming robust once again. As Shiyang knew Death and Life Power Upanishad, he knew it could change. Although Harson didn't know Life Power Upanishad, his Burning Purgatory Power Upanishad had the magical power of burning the soul to generate energy and vice versa as well. It could burn the death energy to produce vitality. No wonder why the ring spirit said that it didn't know how powerful Harson's power could be when his three powers Upanishads could fuse all together. We couldn't use the normal standard to assess this man. That year, when Xian Shan had cultivated his death and corpse chi power Upanishads to a profound level and decoded the connection between the two powers, he had become a new race of the bloodthirsty force. That was how he was eligible to receive a part of the ring spirit's memory. Today, with the burning purgatory power Upanishad from the God clan, no one knew to what height Harson could reach in the future. Luckily, his soul didn't belong to this cosmos. In the future, he could tear all the principles and rules that had bound creatures here. Without this advantage, perhaps Harson would have been the chosen one and the ring spirit's best option. Looking at Harson reviving, Shiyang frowned. He knew that it would be awkward when Harson woke up and saw him here. Another battle would be inevitable. And now, Harson had been imprinted the mark of the blood cloud, which certified his membership of the bloodthirsty force. At the same time, Shiyang was the current leader of the bloodthirsty force. When Harson had made up his mind, He would be Shi Yang's subordinate. As things were all set, Shi Yang didn't need to care about them so much. Studying Harson for seconds, he smiled frankly and then left. After he had left, Harson woke up, his face baffled. He looked so confused when he sat up and mumbled to himself. "Weren't I just dead?" The mark flashed on his forehead. Images appeared in his brain. Death power Upanishad inheritance. Corpse chi flowing like a stream. All the memories flooded his soul altar like a rushing river. The two powers Upanishad that had been existing vaguely in his soul altar for a long time became clear. Many magical things he had touched before in his dreams were now visible in front of him. Harson gradually understood it. He sat in silence for a long time before clutching his head and screaming in pain. "No. Impossible. It shouldn't be like that." Harson cried and screamed pitifully, tearing his skin and hair. He looked like a howling beast that wailed as he wanted to eliminate the death power and corpse chi in his soul altar. He wanted to wash the power in Xian Shan's bones. He couldn't accept all of these. He had always considered the Charteris family his pride and glory. He had set his mind to kill Haig and become the next leader of the God Clan. He deemed the Bloodthirsty his mortal enemy, and the Immortal Demon Clan, the Heavenly Monster Tribe, and the Imperial Dark Tribe his rivals. All of a sudden, he was resurrected from death and he found that everything was tumbled upside down. What he had believed in for years was shattered. He had become the archenemy that he had pledged to kill. Harson collapsed. Harson screamed and cried, trying to harm his body and torture himself. He didn't want to accept all of these. He needed time to adapt to this tragic change. Chapter 1174, The Remains of the Holy Beast White Tiger. Chapter 1174, The Remains of the Holy Beast White Tiger. By the border of the desert, the 6 warriors of the Charteris family had their soul altars shatter all of a sudden. They died tragically, which put a stop on their bloody battle. MIA and U-Man didn't think anything and they ran away at their max speed immediately. MIA understood that unless Harson had encountered something terrible, his warriors wouldn't perish abruptly like that. MIA and U-Man were wise enough to run away right after that. Sho Jiao, Mo Fu, and Shong Ying wanted to chase after them, but Audrey raised her hand to stop them. No need to pursue them. Haig is near. Mo Fu and Wu Feng were surprised. They became thrilled. We can kill them all together. Audrey shot them a cold look and said indifferently, Haig gathered more warriors than we did. If you think you can destroy him, just go there and check yourself. Sho Jiao, Mo Fu, and the others looked frightened. They waved their hands reluctantly and didn't want to insist on this. Are you kidding us? Haig was the strongest of his generation in the God Clan. He was even stronger than Harson. And he had a lot of warriors going with him. Without Audrey's support, how could they dare to take risks? Didn't you say that your soul consciousness couldn't sense this area? Asked Cecilia in confuse. Audrey was still cold and calm. She said simply, too close. We can still feel each other. The battle between Shi Yang and Harson had stirred up the energy in the center of the desert, which has changed the earth and heaven's principles out there. Many warriors were attracted to them. Haig wasn't an exception. Should we prepare to engage in a battle with them? Asked Sho Jiao. Audrey shook her head. I think that we shouldn't. Haig's team isn't very different from us. Before we reached the Holy Mountain, he won't spend energy in vain. Unless his team is stronger than us, he won't come to us proactively. I know this man. He's very cautious. He won't be wild and rash like Harson. Did Shi Yang win? Wu Feng's eyes looked strange. As we can see that the 6 warriors of Harson's team had died all of a sudden, I think Harson is now in big trouble. Otherwise, it wouldn't be that fast. Everybody thought the same. Harson was the hope of the Charteris family. His power Upanishad is refined and is brutal and crazy. He's the only warrior of the God Clan who can face Haig directly. I didn't expect that Shi Yang could defeat him. It's a big surprise, though. Sho Jiao seemed to admire the other a lot. Cecilia and Shong Ying had waves of happy light ripple from their eyes. Their hearts had many vibes as if they could share his glory. Audrey was astounded. She was a little shocked knowing how strong the immortal demon clan was. "Here he comes," Audrey hissed. Everybody focused and waited. Shortly after, a shadow approached and appeared in their sights at a normal speed. He pitched his voice. "Are you all right?" It was Yang. Everybody else smiled and jabbered. "Where's Hassan? Did you kill him? Are you hurt?" All of them cared about Hassan's situation since he was the sharpest weapon of the God clan who was the big fear in their heart. This included Audrey. People's fear for Hassan was bigger and deeper than what they had for Haig. This was because Haig was a sane man and he could reason like a normal people, while Hassan was a bloodthirsty mad dog that no one dared to touch. No one wanted to taste his sharp, spear-like madness. "Hassan is still alive. I haven't defeated him yet. However, his god body has some problems. He ran away." Yang had something made up already. He said with his jaw clenched, "The burning purgatory power Upanishad of the Charteris family is really terrifying. Hassan's power seemed to be able to increase unlimitedly. If his soul and body could endure it, I think that I would be the one who had to run away." Hearing him, people changed their visage. "Hassan is still alive," they couldn't help but yell. Seems like Hassan's damages were significant and his body couldn't bear it. Thus, he had killed his 6 subordinates to supply energy to him. He seized the chance and then ran away. "He's going to come for you to take revenge later." Audrey drilled her look into Yang. "It's enough for you to be proud." After Hassan grew up, he has been experiencing countless big and small battles. He has left his mad reputation in the big star areas. No one has ever heard that he had to run away because he couldn't resist the enemy. You could force him to run away. Your reputation would spread throughout the cosmos. Listening to Audrey, people then looked at Yang with more respect and admiration. The one who could force Hassan to run helter-skelter would be the most talented warrior in the vast universe. He was eligible to resist Haig. In their minds, Yang's position had just leaped up. He was about to surpass Audrey for sure. "Leave the desert. We're heading to the holy mountain in the center." Audrey observed the area and let out a low shout. People replied cheerily. Dash. Situated by the desert was a dark valley where filled with strong howling winds. MIA and U-Man staggered and landed in this valley as if someone had guided them here. As soon as they landed, they felt a sudden chill as if some beast was watching their soul alter. A strong gust slapped over and cleaned the thick mist in the valley. Haig, Phelps, and around 10 warriors of the God clan appeared. "Haig," MIA hissed. Haig nodded and said coldly, "Has something unexpected happened to Yang?" He could feel the heat from Yang and Hassan's fighting in the center of the desert. The earth-shaking energy changed due to their battle and it attracted other warriors who came and checked. "Hassan, I think is over." MIA frowned painfully. She tried to talk while hiding the pain. "His 6 troopers died instantly. Their soul altars shattered. It means that Hassan has encountered something unexpected. Perhaps he was dead already." Phelps, Peyton, and the other warriors of the God clan discolored in fright. "We know something unexpected had happened, but I don't think Hassan would be killed that easily." Haig pondered for a while and said with his brows knitted. "I've been competing with Hassan for years. I know how strong and wild he is. Whoever wants to kill him, including me, has to pay the most disastrous price." Perhaps the god body was smashed. To that point, Haig paused for a while and then looked at the desert and said, "The one who fought with Hassan still has full energy. He wasn't hurt. Thus, even though something had happened to Hassan, I believe he's still alive. If Hassan was killed, I'm afraid his opponent wouldn't be able to even move now." Haig understood the situation well. After years of fighting with Hassan, Haig knew clearly how terrific Hassan was. He knew that Hassan's most fierce feature was that no one would return intact from the battle where Hassan had to die. The fact that Yang was safe and sound helped Haig confirm that Hassan was still alive. However, his condition wasn't really good. "We should go there to rescue Hassan," MIA proposed, her face stern and her eyes begging. Haig looked unconcerned. "They aren't weaker than us. If we go there, both sides will bear losses. It's not my style. The wisest thing to do now is to gather our people." We should try to kill the enemies on the way and try our best to destroy them to reduce our loss. Haig explained his plan. Phelps and the others nodded. Apparently, they had considered Haig their leader. No one batted an eye on Harson's story. MIA sighed discreetly. After she could confirm that Harson was all right, she wasn't so persistent. She agreed to Haig's plan too. They are heading to the Holy Mountain too. We should hurry up. Haig waved his hand and smiled at MIA. I got many good things to help you increase your power a little bit. Desolate is a rich land. If you notice, you will find treasures everywhere. MIA cheered up. Dash. From a bird's view, people could see many small dots like a colony of ants heading to the Holy Mountain in the center. Shi Yang, Audrey, and their warriors gathered on one side while Haig, Phelps, and MIA took their warriors and walked on the other trail. The two teams weren't close or too far from each other. However, it was impossible to use the soul consciousness to sense them. Anyway, if one team moved faster and the other team moved slower, they would encounter each other. Many warriors from the other clans were operating alone in the other areas. Regardless, every person was heading in the same direction. The Holy Mountain stood majestically in between the radiant rainbow and auspicious clouds. It looked so beautiful even though it stood still. It sparkled and waited for people to come and explore. There was a small dot, which was closest to the Holy Mountain. He was moving really fast though. If nothing unexpected happened, he was going to be the first one to enter the imposing mountain. That warrior was Kang Yun. Kang Yun was part of the first wave of warriors entering the center. As soon as they had stepped in, Kang Yun separated from Cecilia and Shong Yingyu and moved away alone. Shi Yang, Audrey, MIA, Haig, Phelps, and the others had encountered battles or death traps, which delayed them for a while. However, as Kang Yun was heading to the Holy Mountain alone, he was ahead of all of them. Kang Yun's monster body was as tough as granite when he moved between the thorny bushes. He wasn't afraid of the hooked thorns from the bushes as he moved forcefully and brutally. His body was like a bulldozer that crushed the thorny bushes that could tear normal warriors apart. He was dashing like crazy. Being a member of the Heavenly Monster Tribe, one of the 4 great races, Kang Yun had shown his intimidating power of the Heavenly Monster Tribe. Kang Yun suddenly changed his direction and moved between the bushes. After traveling for several hours, he halted. A mountain range that had the shape of a roaring tiger appeared in front of Kang Yun. This mountain range wasn't as majestic as the Holy Mountain. The brown-gray rock was built in the shape of a tiger that roared at the sky. It looked lively and it gave people a terrifying impression. Kang Yun reached the foot of the mountain and then thrust his arm into the rock flange. The sea of energy in his arm gushed out tremendously. Crack, crack, crack. The mountain range exploded. Big rocks fell and shattered in the mountain stream. A massive crystal white skeleton emerged inside the mountain range, which had the shape of a robust tiger. The holy beast white tiger, Kang Yun mumbled. His eyes glowed with a magical halo as he was tenderly stroking the white jade claws of the huge tiger skeleton. He was trying to sense something. Chapter 1175, After 5 years. Chapter 1175, After 5 years. Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise were the 4 great holy ancestors of the Heavenly Monster Tribe. The Vermilion Bird and the Black Tortoise had fallen and their remains were wandering around the vast sea of stars. Shi Yang had met the Vermilion Bird's remains by chance. It helped his Vermilion Bird True Flame evolve. The Black Tortoise's skeleton now belonged to Zhuoshi and it turned into her seal of power. At the same time, no one knew where the Azure Dragon and the White Tiger were. Today, in the center of the ancient continent, Kang Yun had found the White Tiger near the Holy Mountain. The skeleton of the beast was like a several thousand-meter tall mountain range. It was fulgent in white and it radiated beautifully like the white chalcedony. Still, the skeleton had maintained a fierce, bloodthirsty aura. The White Tiger was the killing star. The genealogical book of the Heavenly Monster Tribe had a detailed record of it. In the White Tiger was one of the branches of the Heavenly Monster Tribe who held a similar position to the Charteris family of the God Clan or the immortal Demon Clan of Demon Clan. They were the best valiant warriors of these clans. Kang Yun stroked the giant skeleton of White Tiger. His face had some subtle, magical changes in silence. Tiger stripes appeared on his skin. The word king identifying the White Tiger branch also appeared on his forehead. Kang Yun was from the lineage of the holy beast White Tiger. As he fondled the white crystal bones, boiling energy fluctuations emitted from his monster body just like a massive whirlpool that could swallow everything in this world. Streams of crystal white energy gushed out of the White Tiger's remains and slowly entered Kang Yun through the palms of his hands placed on the skeleton. The drawings on Kang Yun's body rippled and surged like sea waves. He suddenly faced the sky and roared like a real tiger. His monster body changed immediately. He had transformed into a majestic tiger that was several hundred meters long. He had become the king of the animals in the forest, and he drew in the torrential energy from the chalcedony bones of the White Tiger. Beams of white light emitted from the holy beast White Tiger and fell on Kang Yun's body like a dense sprinkle. Kang Yun's blood qi became brimming. It looked like he was taking in the immemorial inheritance to obtain the purest power and the power Upanishad of his branch. The holy ancestor White Tiger's remains turned from crystal white to grey-white. As its energy was being taken out, it lost the halo gradually. The skeleton cracked as if it couldn't remain tough any longer. In contrast to this, Kang Yun had become more robust and imposing. He was filled with power that could help him tear all the flesh of any creature. He looked imposingly tyrannical, indeed. It was the imperial aura of the holy beast White Tiger. Kang Yun was absorbing the energy from the White Tiger's remains. By the river flowing through a mountain stream, Shi Yang, Audrey, Cecilia, Shong Yingyu, Wu Feng, and the others were moving along the river and heading towards the holy mountain. Audrey had picked this trail, so no one had any other opinion. It was strange that since they had walked along this river in the valley, they didn't encounter any death trap. Everything was so smooth that it made people confused and afraid. Audrey didn't give them an explanation. They could only hold their doubts within. Everybody understood that as Audrey was the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe, she must have a lot of knowledge about this ancient continent. Also, Audrey had mastered the abilities of the Soul Altar. She wouldn't bring people to a dead corner. Dangers are awaiting us ahead after we pass this area. If my ancestors weren't wrong, there should be a big lake over there that we can't walk around to pass. Otherwise, it will be much more dangerous, said Audrey all of a sudden. Everybody was perplexed. Our Imperial Dark Tribe will come to this ancient continent every 10,000 years. Many of my precursors had been here. Of course, most of them had explored the area and returned with nothing good. Only some of them had a significant harvest. Audrey pondered for a while before telling the details. The precursors who had visited this continent had recorded things that they had experienced. They wanted the next generations to explore more. People understood it now. In this vast universe, it was rare that the dominant force could keep their power without declining for a long time. It meant that the force or the family of Cecilia, Shong Yingyu, Wu Feng, and Mo Fu might not have existed tens of thousands of years ago. Thus, they knew the magical features of this ancient continent from others or some special channels they had. However, they couldn't have any ancestor telling them the marvelous characteristics of this place. Tens of thousands of years ago, their ancestors weren't born yet. Anyway, the Imperial Dark Tribe was different. They were the strongest race in this world. They were the key characters of the cosmos in every era. Thus, the experts of the Imperial Dark Tribe were able to come to the ancient continent every time it opened. Throughout many generations, the precursors of the Imperial Dark Tribe had described the features of the ancient continent and gave instructions to their future generations. Thus, they could have better knowledge than anyone else on getting into this place, which made them different from ordinary warriors. That was why Audrey knew that Desolate has consciousness. She even knew its strange interest to give Shi Yang some advice. So, we should be more cautious in the coming time, right? Wu Feng asked with a heavy face. Correct, Mo Fu replied and frowned. He didn't walk more, his eyes scanning Jiao Hai, Jiao Shan, and the others as if he wanted to find some scouts. At this point, they all knew that it would be perilous to advance further. There would be a lethal death trap waiting for them. Thus, They became careful. No one wanted to walk ahead. Everyone hoped that someone would replace them to be the vanguard. All of a sudden, no one proactively stepped forward. Everybody halted. Audrey and Shiyang knitted their brows. You and your brother go ahead and make way for us. Shiyang darkened his face and pointed at Wu Feng and Wu Bai, asking them to scout. Why us? Wu Feng's eyes changed and looked at Jiao Hai, Jiao Shan, and Sho Jiao sinisterly. Why not them? He turned to Cecilia and Shong Yingyu. How about them? Apparently, Wu Feng didn't want to do that. It's okay if you don't want to go, Shiyang pursed his lips and grinned, then leave this team. Wu Feng felt a sudden chill in his heart. He couldn't help but look at Audrey with the hope that she would say something fair. He understood that Cecilia, Shong Yingyu, and Shiyang had something ambiguous. He also knew that Jiao Shan, Jiao Hai, and Sho Jiao had followed Shiyang. During a moment like this, of course, Shiyang would protect them to maintain his force. That was why he asked his brothers to take risks. Shiyang had proven that his position and state could surpass most of the people here, and he was able to stand shoulder by shoulder with Audrey. Thus, he could only count on Audrey. Unfortunately, Audrey didn't give him face. You brothers should go scouting. After 10 miles, Mo Fu will take the shift. Then, we alter every 10 miles, said Audrey. In Audrey's eyes, only Shiyang was strong enough to talk to her or bargain with her in this group. The others were all inferior creatures that weren't worth her time. Listening to Audrey, Wu Feng's face turned pitiful. He had no other choice. The two big bosses had agreed. They had no way to reject it. The two brothers put on faces that they would have when they attended a funeral. Since they didn't have any other option around, they started to walk ahead of the team, guarding and checking dangers for every people. Their existences were like sacrificing pawns. Shong Yingyu's eyes had a strange light twinkling. She eyed the Wu brothers and then Mo Fu with his wince. All of a sudden, she felt that the wind had changed. That year, when she had just entered the ancient continent and accompanied Shiyang, Shiyang had only first sky of ethereal god realm. No one appreciated him. Sho Jiao used to want to finish her and Shiyang at the same time. Thinking back to that time, she thought that the Wu brothers and Mo Fu were really tough to deal with. At the same time, she wanted to kill the Bai family's warriors too. It had been just 5 years. 5 short years. Today, Sho Jiao was filled with admiration and gratitude for Shiyang. He always tried to protect Shiyang's welfare and he treated him as his leader. The Wu brothers also needed to follow Shiyang's orders. And Shiyang had killed all of the Bai family's warriors. Afterward, Shong Yingyu had a strange, yet new affection for Shiyang. She also viewed him from another angle. After 5 times, people's position and status here had changed dramatically. It felt like they had survived several generations. Thinking about it, Shong Yingyu felt so emotional. Her cold and clear eyes studied Shiyang quietly while her heart became resolute. He could change everything around him within 5 years. So, after 50 years or 500 years, could he change the entire world? Since Wu Feng and Wu Bai had walked in the front of the team to make way, they had indeed encountered a lot of troubles. The natural barriers had struck them all the time. Audrey and Shiyang followed them closely. Once they found the Wu brothers encounter danger, they would help them timely. They had saved Wu Feng and Wu Bai many times. After 10 miles, it was Mo Fu's shift. This time, Mo Fu happily performed his role. He didn't resist even a bit. It was because Audrey and Shiyang were worth their trust. They wouldn't ignore them when they were in danger. Audrey and Shiyang were trying their best to reduce the losses for this team. Mo Fu had advanced 8 miles ahead. He halted and raised his voice. Guys, check it out. There's a lake ahead of us, which looks like a bright mirror. People dashed forward and stood by Mo Fu to watch. They then saw a lake ahead of them that was so crystal clear that it was like a mirror. It didn't have a single leaf or a small fish. This lake had a strange, clear water that reflected some images. With a closer look, they found that there were the bright moon and the dazzling sun as big as the stone mill. People instinctively looked up to watch the sky. The sky was covered by the cotton clouds and it left no gap for the sunlight to reach the ground. They didn't see a single star, let alone the sun or the moon. If there were no star, moon, or sun in the sky, why could they see their reflections on the water? Everybody frowned and felt something strange happening around them. This abnormal lake made them feel insecure. A cold, soft hand appeared in Shiyang's palm. He was surprised and he turned around to find that it belonged to Cecilia. Cecilia didn't have her sexy makings anymore. She looked a little pale, mumbling with fear. "Remember, you've promised me to help me with something?" "I do," nodded Shiyang. Cecilia's cold finger pointed to the lake as she whispered, "It's this place. Will you come with me to the lake? You've promised me." Shiyang was astounded. Chapter 1176, Wonderland. Chapter 1176, Wonderland. It was true that Shiyang had promised her. He had agreed to do one thing for Cecilia even before he had anything ambiguous with Cecilia. He had almost forgotten it until Cecilia reminded him. He thought that Cecilia came to the ancient continent just to collect the treasures of water class. In the middle of the desert, Cecilia had harvested a lot of water heart crystals. He assumed that those crystals were the reason why she was here. Today, Shiyang finally understood that he was completely wrong after listening to her. "You've agreed with me. Will you help me?" Cecilia begged him. Shiyang smiled and nodded naturally. "It's true. I agreed with you. Of course, I will help you." Shiyang and Cecilia walked behind the group. When Cecilia talked to him, she held his hand, so they had to stop walking for a while, which gave them a little distance from the others. People who walked in the front couldn't hear their conversation. Mo Fu was still scouting ahead. That strange lake stood in front of him where the images of the suns and the moons were reflected. However, there weren't only one sun and one moon. They counted and found 9 dazzling suns and 9 bright moons. Grey clouds stuck in the horizon. This place didn't have a single star, which made the reflections of the suns and the moons in the lake so odd. It made people not dare to act rashly. Mo Fu stopped. He urged his energy and tried to sense the surrounding. Audrey frowned and said, "We need to swim across the lake. The areas around the lake are even more perilous." No one dared to doubt Audrey. They changed their visage and studied the lake. Their hearts sank and felt helter-skelter. Audrey looked at Mo Fu and said indifferently, "You still need 2 more miles. You go first." Mo Fu's countenance changed. According to their agreement, they would take turns to scout. After he finished his 10 miles, the Wu brothers would take their turn. He had finished 8 miles. If that damn lake wasn't there, he could finish his turn smoothly. But now, Mo Fu wore a dark face. He accepted his unfortunate fate, sighing and preparing to jump into the lake. "Wait a minute." However, at this moment, Shiyang called out from their back and sauntered to their front. People didn't know what was going on and they just turned around to look at him. Mo Fu had no clue. He asked, "Is there anything you want me to do for you?" He sounded friendly because Shiyang had helped him many times during this trip. "You stay here. We will enter the lake first." Shiyang turned to look at Cecilia. They now noticed Cecilia following him closely. Her charming face was stern. "You too." Shong Yingyu screamed in surprise. Shiyang waved his hand as he said, "That lake is a little strange. Let's go there first. We will notify you later." Mo Fu showed great gratitude. They all could see that the lake had something weird. Mo Fu had prepared to encounter dangers. At this critical point, Shiyang suddenly took the responsibility. Although Mo Fu didn't know his intention, he had appreciated Shiyang from the bottom of his heart. He had made up his mind that whenever Shiyang and Audrey had a dispute, he would stand on Shiyang's side. "Thank you," Mo Fu exhaled in relief. He backed off and said sincerely, "You must be careful. This lake isn't normal at all." Audrey frowned. She studied Shiyang and then Cecilia, and then snorted. She didn't voice her opinion in this. If Audrey didn't have any opinion, of course, no one would oppose it. They decided this task that way. When Shiyang and Cecilia came by the lake, he gestured and said to the others, "Guys, back off. I need to talk to Cecilia." Audrey nodded. The other warriors stepped back and left Shong Yingyu at her spot, looking at Shang Yingyu and Cecilia worriedly. Shi Yang smiled and didn't mind Shang Yingyu, who stood still at her spot. He asked calmly, "Can you explain the situation now?" He looked at Cecilia. "I have an elderly teacher. 10,000 years ago, she used to visit this area," said Cecilia sadly. Her teacher cultivated water power Upanishad and she had lived for more than 10,000 years. The last time this planet opened, she had come here with her husband. They had made it to the center of the ancient continent and reached this lake. Her husband went to the lake and sank little by little as if he was pulled by something invisible and drowned. While he was sinking to the bottom of the lake, he sent his wife the soul message and asked her not to get into the lake no matter what. He told her to stay and wait for him. Cecilia's teacher had waited for him. Not long after that, the lake became normal and had no reflections. Everything became pretty normal. Cecilia's teacher couldn't sense any commotion of her husband. She entered the lake to search but found nothing. Her husband seemed to have vanished into thin air. Right after that, she stopped her expedition of this ancient continent to search the lake for years. When the ancient continent kicked her out, she hadn't found her husband yet. It became a sickness in her heart. Afterward, she left the ancient continent and returned to her life star. She had continued to search for her husband's whereabouts. Unfortunately, she didn't have a clue. She was sure that her husband had disappeared in this lake on the ancient continent. Perhaps he had been dragged into a strange domain or confined somewhere. Probably, he had died. She stopped yearning for the day she could reunite with her husband. However, she wanted to see his remains. Thus, she accepted a disciple and taught her skills and abilities. She had even tried to find a guiding fruit for her to send her to the ancient continent the next time. She hoped that her disciple could fulfill her wish. "My teacher used to tell me that this lake has some power of water with the space power. She couldn't see its real competence. She told me that it would be possible to enter the lake when I go there with someone cultivates space power Upanishad. Then, we can decode the riddle of this lake." Cecilia looked at Shi Yang. Shi Yang suddenly understood. No wonder why Cecilia showed a deep interest in him when she saw him using space power Upanishad. Later on, she wanted to go with him and shoulder to fight Mia's team. Cecilia had wanted to count on his power earlier. Because he knew space power Upanishad. "I want to enter the lake. I've promised my teacher to help her find her husband's remains. My teacher has done so many things for me to come here and to have my attainment today. I won't let her down." Cecilia looked at Shi Yang tenderly. "Please help me." "All right," Shi Yang smiled and agreed with her. He turned to Shang Yingyu and said to her, "You heard it, right? We know what had happened. I will jump to the lake with her. Don't worry. We will be all right." "I'm going with you guys," Shang Yingyu suggested all of a sudden. "No need," Shi Yang waved his hand to stop her. "I can deal with it. You just stay here. Leave it to me." Shi Yang didn't wait for Shang Yingyu to talk more, directly jumping and pulling Cecilia into the lake. No water splashed. It seemed like they had just walked through a door and disappeared. Shang Yingyu was scared. Shi Yang and Cecilia had jumped into the lake. She saw it with her own eyes. However, she couldn't see any signal of them in the lake. Cecilia and Shi Yang seemed to have vanished into thin air right at that moment. The lake was still clear and bright like a mirror with the reflections of the suns, moons, and the cotton clouds. Everything looked normal. Shang Yingyu felt her hair rising on her nape. Where have Shi Yang and Cecilia gone? Audrey, Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, and the others also saw Shi Yang and Shang Yingyu jump into the lake. They dashed forward and stood by Shang Yingyu to look at the lake skeptically. Shang Yingyu took a deep breath. She told Audrey what she had found. Since she knew Audrey had a supernatural ability, she wanted to use her to find Shi Yang and Cecilia. Audrey changed her visage. She immediately closed her eyes to urge the soul altar. She wanted to use the secret technique of the soul searching of the Imperial Dark Tribe. She set her soul consciousness to the lake. After a while, Audrey shook her head, her face cold. She confirmed, "This lake doesn't have their auras." They then wore heavy faces. "Don't rush. Shi Yang isn't like the others. I think he could deal with it." Audrey contemplated for a while and then comforted them, "We just have to wait here and see." Since they didn't have any better idea, they had to agree with her. They scattered by the lake and focused on the water, waiting for Shi Yang's commotion in silence. "Where are we? This is absolutely not the bottom of the lake." Cecilia looked at the sky and screamed in surprise. Shi Yang also wore a strange countenance. Lifting his head to look at the sky, he mumbled, "Is it a real world?" The dark red sky held 9 suns and 9 moons arranged in some particular formation. The 18 suns and moons radiated the hot sunlight and the cold moonlight, which looked like a light column piercing through the sky and earth to illuminate this area. The ground under their feet was like a massive crystal with dazzling light streamers moving inside. Above their heads were the suns and moons, and under their feet was the galaxy of stars. This strange world couldn't be caught even in their fantasy dreams. It looked so strange, indeed. Shi Yang wasn't so sure if those things were all real. He urged his soul altar and focused on his ethereal extent and the star power Upanishad. Swish, swish, swish. The sunlight, moonlight in the sky, and the starlight streamers underground suddenly surged torrentially as if they were revived. Together, they flooded his body. The sunlight and moonlight columns above their heads moved, all shining on Shi Yang's body. "Oh gosh, they are real." Shi Yang couldn't help but whine, his face disbelieving. It was not a fantasy world. The suns, moons, and stars in the imaginary world couldn't bring him any energy. His star power Upanishad couldn't work in a fantasy world. But it was real here. Is this place still the ancient continent? Cecilia covered her mouth, looking at the fierce shower of sunlight, moonlight, and starlight swarming Shi Yang. Suddenly, she saw an ethereal extent emerge over Shi Yang's head. She could even see the sun in that ethereal extent. Magically, it looked quite similar to the world they were at. Chapter 1177, It Seems Like a Dreamland. Chapter 1177, It Seems Like a Dreamland. Audrey, Shong Yingyu, Mo Fu, and the others stood by the clear lake and looked at the suns, moons, and scattered stars twinkling. All of a sudden, the lake rippled. It looked like some strange and evil energy was trying to do something to the lake to hide its peculiarity. The ripples on the lake surface ceased. Everybody changed their visage in fear. There was no sun, moon, or star anymore. The lake now reflected the clouds, which were the exact objects floating above their heads. The strange reflections in the lake were gone. Shong Yingyu paled. She couldn't help but scream in panic. The other warriors looked at her. Shong Yingyu promptly told them what Cecilia had told her. She explained how Cecilia's teacher's husband had disappeared into that lake. The lake became normal, but her husband had gone forever. No one knew whether he was alive or not. And now, things on the lake had changed the same way it had done 10,000 years ago. It happened exactly as Cecilia had told them. "Do you know what's going on?" Wu Feng looked at Audrey. "As you're from the Imperial Dark Clan, if you don't know it, I think no one will have a clue." Everybody was waiting for Audrey to talk. Audrey shook her head. "I don't know. What should we do?" Shong Yingyu was so worried as if she had a flame burning her. "If what Cecilia said is true, are they gone in this lake and we won't be able to find them even 10,000 years later?" Jiao Shan, Shuo Jiao, and Mo Fu had serious faces. They were really worried about Shi Yang. They frowned and thought about what to do. "No. I have to go there to see." Shong Yingyu gritted her teeth and then jumped into the lake. She moved around the bottom of the lake for a while. Audrey, Shuo Jiao, and the others were baffled to watch Shong Yingyu moving into the lake. However, she didn't disappear. They could still see her swimming and raking through the lake bottom. They knew that the lake had resumed its normal state. Shuo Jiao, Jiao Hai, Jiao Shan, Mo Fu, and Wu Feng jumped into the lake, trying to see if they could find the secret of the lake to rescue Shi Yang and Cecilia. After a long time, they got out of the lake, including Shong Yingyu. This lake wasn't really big. After 2 hours, they had carefully checked the entire lake several times. Audrey had even used her soul consciousness to check. No one got anything. Shi Yang and Cecilia had disappeared like that. I can say that when we saw the lake having the suns and moons, it would be a magical space entrance at that time. Audrey contemplated and then spoke. People nodded in agreement. I mean, Shi and Cecilia aren't in the lake. They've been transferred to another space or are confined somewhere. Or they didn't want to get back. And if they want to get back, it's not sure if they will reappear here. The ancient continent has so many marvelous secrets that I can't see through. Pausing for a while, Audrey sat down cross-legged and said indifferently, we'll wait for them for half a day. If they don't go out, when our time is up, we must leave without them. Jiao Shan and the others wore heavy faces. They knew Audrey's decision was correct, so they could only nod begrudgingly. I'm going to stay and wait for them, said Shang Yingyu coldly. Dash. The suns and moons were in the sky while they had stars under their feet. It felt like they were walking in the void. Shi Yang stood there and lifted his head to look at the sky and the columns of sunlight and moonlight descending from the sky like the rivers. Specks of starlight like flying fireflies entered the ethereal extent above his head. His ethereal extent was like an unreal world or a massive, greedy mouth that was swallowing the moonlight and sunlight and making them a part of it. Shi Yang looked like he had been petrified. His god body was still and it remained in his state to receive all of the light. His soul altar was emitting terrifying energy fluctuations, especially his devouring power Upanishad. The black hole was connected to the ethereal extent. Shi Yang's ethereal extent was swallowing the lights of the suns, moons, and stars. It seemed like his ethereal extent had controlled everything. Cecilia looked at Shi Yang and gasped in fright for a while. Then, she realized that Shi Yang was standing still as if he didn't hear her calling. However, she knew that Shi Yang was fine. She could see that he was taking in the marvelous benefits of this area. Except for the fact that she didn't know where they were. Looking at Shi Yang standing still for a long time, she didn't dare to disturb him. Cecilia hesitated for a while and then moved around this strange place to explore. As she always remembered her teacher's words, she wanted to find the remains of her teacher's beloved one, which was possibly here for 10,000 years. She started to walk around. She continued walking. This place seemed to not have an end or any border. After a long time of moving, she figured out that she was pretty far from where Shi Yang was standing. Unfortunately, she hadn't found anything yet. There was no river, mountain, sea, rock, or even a leaf of grass. Nothing she knew was found here. Not a single bone. Eventually, she felt hopeless, so she turned around and walked back to Shi Yang. All of a sudden, she saw a mountain, which was very massive like a pillar that supported the whole sky and stood majestically. She stood still and watched the massive mountain. After a while, she was struck that she suddenly recognized that it was the center of Desolate. She woke up all of a sudden. She found that she was standing in a vast forest by the foot of the holy mountain. She was just one step away from the mountain. The galaxy under her feet and the wonder of 18 suns and moons above her head had disappeared. It looked like everything was a dream, a fantasy dream. It felt like she had entered the lake and got to this place when she got out. Cecilia stood in a daze and knitted her brows to think. She wanted to know the truth. She wanted to confirm that she wasn't just dreaming. Bewilderedly, she thought that she just had a hallucination. However, she thought it was more of a hallucination now than before. She stood with a dull, baffled face. "Oh, you've come here one step ahead." A surprised voice arose. Kang Yun's succulent body appeared. He immediately retrieved his murderous aura and showed his innocent smile. Cecilia pulled herself together from her thoughts, her charming face bewildered. "I don't know how I got here. Just a moment ago, I was in a strange place where there were 9 suns and 9 moons. I could see the galaxy underneath my feet. Why am I here all of a sudden?" She furrowed her brows and said uncertainly, abruptly, she yelled, "Shi Yang, where's Shi Yang? It's not a dreamland. It's not a dream." She didn't notice that Kang Yun had a panic-stricken visage when she described the area to him. He looked at her but his eyes weren't focused as he was mumbling something. Kang Yun surely knew something. Chapter 1178, The Third Sky of Ethereal God Realm. Chapter 1178, The Third Sky of Ethereal God Realm. Shi Yang stood still in that strange world. The light from the 9 suns and 9 moons shone above his head while specks of starlight surged under his feet. All congregated into his ethereal extent. Shi Yang's ethereal extent changed slowly. The ethereal extent seemed to reflect this area. Slowly, it had 9 suns, 9 moons, and specks of stars that looked marvelous and yet strange. Shi Yang sank in the transformation of the star and space. He could touch the ripples of death and life power Upanishad in his soul altar while his powers Upanishads in the soul altar were changing at a speed that he could never imagine. Gradually, his world dimmed when the light of the suns and moons above his head partially disappeared. They faded away like shadows. Suddenly, countless stars under his feet were all gone. This world seemed to be absorbed by his ethereal extent and was imprinted in his ethereal extent. Shi Yang found himself standing in a place of white fog. He couldn't see or sense anything else. It seemed like he was lonely in this peculiar earth and heaven. After an unknown time, Shi Yang woke up. He had a wonderful feeling as if he had conquered and embedded a whole world in his brain. As soon as he received this thought, he was shaken hard. The god power ancient tree in his body had doubled. His bones and veins were quenched by the sunlight, moonlight, and starlight. His space, star, death and life intent domains had been upgraded. He had reached third sky of ethereal god realm. His soul was inexplicably sublimated. Using his soul consciousness to check his body, he found that his ethereal extent now was like a real world with the sun, moon, and stars. He could understand all of their mysteries. However, the real powers of the sun, moon, and stars in his ethereal extent were much weaker than he had imagined. Also, it wasn't as strong as the strange world he used to visit. Shi Yang frowned and felt puzzled as if he had fallen into a thick mist. It's not easy for you to merge the truth of star and space power of that man into your ethereal extent. Your realm is too low. Of course, you can't take all the roots of the world that man had created based on Desolate that year. Desolate won't allow you to do that. Suddenly, Shi Yang heard the ring spirit's voice in his soul. Shi Yang was surprised. He asked, I don't quite understand. 100,000 years ago, that man was the top warrior of the god clan. His powers Upanishads were very similar to yours. He had fused the power of the star and space. The primary light power Upanishad of the god clan is now actually the source of the star power Upanishad. The moonlight, the sunlight, and the starlight are all light in nature. They are very similar to the light power Upanishad of the god clan. The ring spirit explained. Your star power Upanishad comes from the 3-god sect of the Endless Sea. The 3-god sect is a branch of the Radiant God cult, and that Radiant God cult was founded by the warriors cultivating light power Upanishad of the God clan from the ancient time. Real experts of the God clan had visited Grace Mainland pretty early. They spread out the light power Upanishad, which then derived into star power Upanishad. Although they aren't really similar, they have connections, the ring spirit continued. Listening to the ring spirit, Shi Yang understood the matter. Many years ago, he received the star power Upanishad from the secret domain of the precursor named Ouyang. When he got to the Endless Sea, he learned that that precursor was the star god, one of the sages of the 3-god sect. Entering the divine great land from the Endless Sea, Shi Yang knew the Radiant God cult. Then, he learned that the 3 gods of sun, moon, and star were the 3 guardians of the Radiant God cult. The Star Martial Spirit was just one part of the Radiant God cult. This cult had the Flaming Sun Martial Spirit, the Silver Moon Martial Spirit, and the Star Martial Spirit, which the warriors could practice with the Flaming Sun Secret, the Silver Moon Secret, and the Star Secret. Yun Hao, the cult master of the Radiant God cult, had fused the 3 powers into one and called it the Light Power Upanishad. After Shi Yang had left Grace Mainland and experienced many kinds of struggles, he had comprehended the truth of his power Upanishad and he was able to gather the light of the sun, moon, and stars. However, he still called his power the Star Power Upanishad. However, Yun Hao had referred to his power as the Light Power Upanishad. Listening to the ring spirit, Shi Yang understood that his power Upanishad now had been beyond the Light Power Upanishad of the God clan. Although it changed, it still had some connection. However, Why did the top warrior of the God clan create a world in Desolate 100,000 years ago? He wanted to absorb the power of Desolate and use the star and space powers to create a whole new world. He wanted to refine Desolate. The ring spirit's voice trembled. Of course, he failed. He was really dominant at that time. Anyway, he is not the only one who got the same idea. White Tiger of the Heavenly Monster Tribe, an expert of the Immortal Demon Clan, and another expert of the Imperial Dark Tribe had the same thought. In that era, they represented the peak existences of the Great Four creatures. However, all failed. Why did they fail? Shi Yang asked. Weren't they strong enough? Not strong enough. The ring spirit paused for a while and then continued. Even in comparison to warriors of this current era, they were the best of the best. Their intimidation could be compared to the chief of the God Clan, Imperial Dark Tribe, and Heavenly Monster Tribe. They were even stronger in some aspects. But they still failed. They weren't qualified to refine Desolate. Until now, no one had that qualification. No one could do that. What is Desolate after all? You will know later. How about the others who had failed to do that? White Tiger's remains had turned into a mountain range. The incipient extent of that god warrior had turned into the world you've just visited. Desolate has sealed it. After you decoded its essence, that world lost its existence. You've used it to break to third sky of ethereal god realm. It will be the primal form of your incipient extent. If you have enough power, you can create a whole new world too. The Imperial Dark Warrior had turned into the ice blue light cage covering Desolate, which you saw when you got through the atmosphere. The Immortal Demon Expert had turned his god body into that holy mountain. Desolate controls him. 100,000 years ago, the four of them were the strongest experts who led the four great races. They were the essence crystallization of the four ancient continents. But still, they failed. What is the connection between the four ancient continents and Desolate? Why does Desolate open when the other four continents are at its worst exhausted condition? And when they recover their prosperity, Desolate will close. There should be some marvelous connection between them, right? Asked Shi Yang. You're not dumb. The 5 ancient continents used to be one entity. However, they were divided when they were born. It was like dividing a person into 5 pieces. The other 4 continents are its limbs and the Desolate is the control center. Did you understand this example of mine? Shi Yang felt shocked. After years of wandering around this ancient continent, he soon had this thought. He guessed that the 4 ancient continent and Desolate had some connection. Shi Yang, Haig, Audrey, and Kang Yun didn't have their soul consciousness bound on this ancient continent. They felt like they were at home and they could gather earth and heaven energy easily. All of these were because of the origins of the ancient continents. However, a guess was just a guess. He couldn't solve the mystery if the ring spirit didn't tell him. Perhaps, he would never understand this thoroughly. At the dawn of the universe, the 5 continents were one. They were divided after that. The 4 ancient continents had drifted apart like limbs of a body that scattered around the regions of the universe. They all had the incredible abilities. Desolate had intelligence and consciousness. Many people had told him this. He also had his cognition of it. If it was true, would the other 4 continents that departed from Desolate have the same intellect as a living being? As you can come up to this point, you didn't fail us. It's true that not only Desolate but also the other 4 continents, Grace Mainland, God-blessed Mainland, Ancient Demon Continent, and Ancient God Continent have incomplete intelligence and consciousness. Otherwise, there would be no Immortal Demon Clan, God Clan, Heavenly Monster Tribe, and Imperial Dark Tribe. The 4 great races were born in the 4 ancient continents respectively. They all wanted to prove that the creature that they had birthed was the most perfect. And they hoped that the creatures they had created could bear their soul memory. Unfortunately, they couldn't do that. Even though the great 4 creatures that they had birthed were really strong, they couldn't bear the continent's formidable memory. Thus, they had no choice but to try to use some other alternative, said the ring spirit. Making us fuse with their origin to create the co-soul and stay in our soul altar. A coexistence. The co-soul is some kind of continent's mediator. Shi Yang screamed in fright. Really smart, appraised the ring spirit. Shi Yang suddenly felt his hair rising on his nape. He couldn't help but release his co-soul. A magical flame spun as his thoughts changed. It was a part of his soul and it had the same pulsation as his. It stores the will and memory of the ancient continent. You don't need to be tense. It can't affect you just yet. When the ancient continents are weakest, they can let out a part of its origin to fuse with your souls and become your co-souls. Currently, Grace Mainland, God-blessed Mainland, Ancient God Continent, and Ancient Demon Continent are like lamps running out of oil. Their power and intellect are in its weakest condition. How could they threaten you guys? No need to worry, comforted the ring spirit. Recently, the ancient continents have begun to revive and collect energy from outer space. When they become strong again, could we still be able to control ourselves? Asked Shi Yang seriously. As long as you're stronger than it, you can control it. Otherwise, the ring spirit didn't finish its sentence. Shi Yang grimaced. So it's not coincidental when a bunch of people like me, the ones who have fused with the origin, appear here, right? What are they seeking? What do they want from Desolate? Shi Yang pointed out the critical question. You'll know it shortly, the ring spirit replied and then went silent. After that, Shi Yang found himself in the lake, soaking wet. Audrey's team had left the lake a long time ago. Only Shang Ying was waiting for him by the lake. Seeing him, her eyes brightened. He frowned and hissed, "Where's Cecilia? Did you see her? Didn't she accompany you?" Shang Ying was inexplicably bewildered. "She hasn't gotten out of the lake yet." Shi Yang changed his visage slightly. Shang Ying shook her head. "I've always been waiting here. I didn't see her. I thought that she went with you all the time." Damn it. Shi Yang cursed under his breath. He wanted to enter that wonderful world one more time. However, he couldn't find the entrance. He understood that the magical world generated by the incipient extent of the precursor from the God Clan had disappeared after the essence of it was carved into his ethereal extent to boost him to third sky of ethereal God realm. Chapter 1179, Destination. Chapter 1179, Destination. The lake was still crystal clear without a single algae leaf or fish. The only thing different from the time he had jumped into the lake was that Shi Yang didn't see any moon or sun. Shang Ying wore a white dress, her face elegant and quiet. However, there was a gleam of sadness on her face. Both Shang Ying and Shi Yang were worried about Cecilia going missing a lot. They didn't know where the woman had gone. As she was too worried, she didn't even notice that Shi Yang had reached a new realm. Now, he was at third sky of ethereal God realm. "How long have you been here?" asked Shi Yang in a low-pitched voice. "I didn't count the time. After Audrey's team left, I sat down to cultivate. I didn't notice the time," said Shang Ying dishearteningly. Shi Yang released a flow of soul consciousness and moved around Shang Ying. Then, he said, "Although your realm didn't advance, your God power is more sufficient and purer. The time you've been cultivating here isn't short, I suppose." "Could be." Shang Ying wasn't so sure. Looking at the holy mountain that was far from them, Shi Yang frowned and pulled himself together. "Let's go. Maybe we will meet her at the holy mountain." The strange, secret domain generated by the god expert's incipient extent had been imprinted in his ethereal extent. Since he didn't see Cecilia in there, it meant that Cecilia wasn't in that strange world with him. She had gotten out earlier. When she got out of that place, if she couldn't find Cecilia and Shi Yang, she would definitely head to their destination, the holy mountain. Shang Ying was still cold and not really talkative. She rarely voiced her opinion, so when Shi Yang made up his mind, she just followed him quietly. They swam across the lake and ran towards the holy mountain. Their way was strangely smooth. The perilous barriers and death traps in the center of the ancient continent were weakened unknowingly. They didn't bother Shi Yang and Shang Ying too much. Shang Ying and Shi Yang didn't understand why Desolate suddenly became so kind and showed a great deal of mercy. The majestic holy mountain standing firm in this world wasn't far from them anymore. They could reach it soon. Shi Yang and Shang Yingyu were like two departed spirits that were crossing a swamp where 5-colored toxic gas hovered above their heads. Their feet didn't touch the swamp. All of a sudden, Shi Yang halted in the middle of the bog. He looked in a direction, his left hand grabbing something in the air. Swish! A starlight stream shot out from his fingertip like a water current, which had the power to detain the world. The starlight stream extended like a snake that swam through the toxic green gas in the swamp. Sizzle! 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 The poisonous smoke was struck and dispersed by his starlight, revealing 2 members of the God clan. They were Phelps's troopers. One was at 2nd sky of ethereal god realm and the other was at 3rd sky of ethereal god realm. Their skin and eyes were now glowing in green. Apparently, they got poisoned by the miasma. Their soul energy fluctuated strangely and was unstable. A cold and evil aura emitted from their bodies. It seemed like the toxic smoke had entered their soul and changed their soul altars. Their god power wasn't reduced but it increased somehow. When they looked at Shang Yingyu and Shi Yang with their monstrous, green eyes, Shang Yingyu felt a chill in her heart as if some monsters were eyeing her. It's some sort of mutant. Their bodies are eroded by the poisons, which have pushed them into bedevilment. They don't have human emotions anymore, muttered Shang Yingyu. Shi Yang didn't change his visage. His soul altar spun rapidly and changed his powers Upanishads. The ethereal extent emerged like a vast galaxy above his head with the radiant sun, the cold moon, and the twinkling stars. Its energy seemed everlasting and it seemed like it could affect the real world out there. In Shi Yang's ethereal extent, the suns spun and turned into scorching fireballs as big as mountains. They covered the 2 members of the God clan with tremendous heat waves. Under the burning power of the suns, which looked so real, an entire swamp evaporated shortly. Even the grass and rocks burned and melted. The suns could destroy the real world. The 2 members of the God clan were poisoned. Under the scorching suns, water in their bodies evaporated. Their bodies then dried up like fish drying under the sunlight for years. The hot sunlight could burn any creature in the world. It dried their bodies and exploded their bones. Pieces of their flesh ignited and burned into ashes. Although they were experts at 2nd and 3rd sky of ethereal god realm, Shi Yang's ethereal extent could burn them easily. They couldn't even wiggle. It was like when the incipient god realm expert had the suppressing slaughter to them. It was a big gap between a realm they could never make up. The dazzling suns above their heads released terrible heat waves that expanded torrentially. Although the toxic gas was recovered, all the trees and rocks around the area burned and exploded. The ground didn't have a drop of water. This scene looked like doomsday. Shang Yingyu couldn't help but take out an icy soul cold crystal and hug it. The icy cold energy from the icy soul cold crystal had kept her safe from the heat. She now looked at Shi Yang in fear. How did you suddenly become so strong? Shang Yingyu was bewildered for a while. She couldn't help but scream. The energy and intimidation that Shi Yang was performing were much more terrifying than when he fought with Hassan. He hadn't transformed into his immortal body, but he could simply kill 2 warriors of the God clan. This kind of deliberation had shocked Shang Yingyu. I've reached 3rd sky of ethereal god realm. Shi Yang squinted, the acupuncture points in his entire body operating. Beams of essence chi from the dead flooded his acupuncture points. It was a process that naked eyes couldn't observe. The whirlpools there filtered and refined them at an amazing speed. Shi Yang chuckled. As he had reached 3rd sky of ethereal god realm, his space, star, death and life powers Upanishad had all grown. The strange world generated by the god clan's precursor's incipient extent had been carved in his ethereal extent, becoming the reflections there and bringing his ethereal extent a marvelous transformation. He had a feeling like he was able to hold the whole world in his hands. He was confident that if he fought Hassan now, he wouldn't need to pay a bloody price to kill him. In this center of the ancient continent, he now had the confidence to face anybody directly. He even believed that he could win in the end. It was a new transformation of the soul and spirit caused by the marvelous increase of power. The energy fluctuation from your body is really intimidating. You can compare it to the warriors at 2nd sky of incipient god realm. It seems like you're Haig's real rival. Shang Yingyu appraised him wholeheartedly. Dry, cracked soil and suns with tyrannical power that could burn down everything were around Shiyang. Listening to Shang Yingyu's appraisal, he retrieved the ethereal extent into his soul altar and said, "We should move." Their way became even smoother. They reached the foot of the holy mountain. Shiyang glanced at the corpses, which belonged to the God clan and the other races. They were possibly warriors from the other star areas led by Audrey. Those corpses weren't intact. Their faces were barely recognizable. Shiyang and Shang Yingyu couldn't tell their identities. Nothing was lingering here. Apparently, they were dead for a long time. Shiyang and Shang Yingyu stopped by and searched around the foot of the holy mountain. Shiyang spoke to her. "It seems like we're the last ones who arrived here. You and I are late." Shang Yingyu nodded. It was really hard to tell the exact time in this place. Shiyang didn't notice the time when he had cultivated in the strange land, and when Shang Yingyu used the icy soul cold crystal to improve her god power, she didn't keep track of time. Thus, they didn't know how long they had lagged behind the others. However, they saw the remains of the others by the foot of the holy mountain that possibly stayed there for a long time and belonged to the groups they knew. They knew that they had wasted a lot of them for their cultivation. Shiyang lifted his head and looked at the holy mountain. The holy mountain was like the sharpest sword piercing into the high sky. They couldn't see the peak. The holy mountain looked like it was covered with fresh blood as it had a dark red hue. At first glance, it gave people a mind constraint. The mountain had a lot of caves that stretched to its summit. They looked like the steps leading to the holy mountain. In the distance, each cave looked like a peculiar eye. Looking at the crimson mountain with caves that were like eyes scattering here and there, Shiyang suddenly had a familiar feeling. It seemed like he had seen this image somewhere. He was so surprised. Shortly after, his eyes became odd. He couldn't help but take out the blood sword and carefully study it for the first time with the earnest attitude he had ever had. The broadsword was straight and blood-red. Closed eyes filled the body of this broadsword and made people's scalps numb. The crimson holy mountain standing majestically with so many caves looked amazingly similar to this broadsword. Absolutely, it wasn't coincidental. Taking a deep breath, Shiyang rose the scarlet sword and tried to contact the ring spirit. "Explain it to me. What's going on?" The ring spirit didn't answer him. It seemed like it was asleep or it just didn't want to talk to him. Shang Yingyu placed her jade-like hand on her mouth, her face aghast. She looked at the blood sword and then the holy mountain. She shivered and said to Shiyang, "So similar." "I think so." Shiyang turned his wrist. Flames danced along the body of the bloody sword in his hand. The closed eyes on the sword quietly opened. The handle of the sword where Shiyang was holding now had a mark of the clusters of blood cloud that emitted a magical energy fluctuation. Shang Yingyu's bright eyes gazed at the mark of the blood cloud. She suddenly screamed as if she was encountering a ghost. "The thing you've inherited. Is it the Bloodthirsty Master's inheritance?" "Yes." "Oh boy." Chapter 1180, The Genesis Fruit. Chapter 1180, The Genesis Fruit. Until now, Shang Yingyu and Cecilia had assumed that Shiyang had inherited the Death Power Upanishad. They had never thought that he had received the Power Upanishad inheritance of the Bloodthirsty Master. They were two different concepts. The Death Inheritance was one of the 8 great inheritances. He was one of the 8 chiefs of the Bloodthirsty Cortege of 8. He couldn't represent the entire force. However, the inheritance from the Master of the Bloodthirsty Force wasn't a joke. It was the peak of the powers Upanishads in this world. It also meant that Shiyang could be the leader of the Bloodthirsty Force and would rule the entire cosmos. "How do you know that I've inherited the power of the Bloodthirsty Force's master?" Shiyang arched his brows. Shang Yingyu looked at the blood sword he was holding and said faintly, "I heard some rumors from my father about that man. He has a bloody sword and a blood shield. They all have the blood mark." She pointed at the mark on the broadsword. Shiyang understood it immediately. After pondering for a while, he asked, "How much you know about the master of the Bloodthirsty Force?" "Not much." Shang Yingyu considered her words and said carefully, He's the most mysterious man in the universe. No one knows where he's from or what race he is. I heard my father say that he was mighty from the moment he made his debut. He knows many kinds of strange powers, Upanishads. At that time, experts of the 4 great races wanted to kill them. However, many powerful existences of the 4 great races started to follow him after they had chased after him for a while. They then became his loyal subordinates. Shi Yang was frightened. Many warriors of the 4 great races had followed him. He didn't know that. Yeah, Shang Yingyu confirmed, as far as I know, the key members of the bloodthirsty force were mostly from the 4 great races. After those people had followed the bloodthirsty master, they had new powers, Upanishads. Their realms and competencies rocketed. Gradually, the bloodthirsty force grew fast. It became a brutal force of this universe. Eventually, the God Clan had joined hands with the other experts from the big star areas to wear out the bloodthirsty force. They had spent many years to destroy this force. As soon as the bloodthirsty master appeared, he was already formidable. Shi Yang frowned and felt baffled. No one could become strong without experiencing difficulties. According to Shang Yingyu, the bloodthirsty master was extremely strong right when he had come to this universe. Thus, he must have experienced something or was holding another identity. Anyway, no one knew this. The powers Upanishads of the bloodthirsty force all came from the master. Before he appeared, those powers Upanishad had never been found in this universe. When the experts of the 4 races had any one of them, they became so formidable. Those powers Upanishad had made them terrifying, infamous existences. This force really consisted of aliens. It was like a dark cloud shrouding the cosmos. No one could struggle out of their hands for so many years. Shang Yingyu explained to Shi Yang while the man was listening to her quietly. Apparently, what Shang Yingyu knew about the bloodthirsty force came from her father, Shang Chen. Although Shang Chen was the fate traveler, he didn't know the profile of the bloodthirsty master. Thus, it would be a big secret. The ring spirit must know this. He tried to contact the ring spirit, but it was still silent. Shi Yang knew that it wasn't that the ring spirit didn't want to talk to him. It was in its last phase of combining parts of its memory. The memories that came from Xian Shan's bone had a large amount of information. It required time for the ring spirit to absorb all of them. Shi Yang understood it well. Shi Yang looked at the holy mountain standing majestically in the cloud and the caves on its flanks. After turning to look at the bloody sword in his hand, Shi Yang pulled himself together. It wasn't the right time to figure it out. He decided to wait for the ring spirit to wake up and tell him the details. We should go to the cave. Calling for Shang Yingyu, Shi Yang jumped into the cave nearest to him. Nothing there prevented him from entering the cave directly. Shang Yingyu followed him closely. The cave was dark and deep with many rocky turns connecting each other. The world inside the caves was cold and gloomy. It gave people a strange mind pressure. Countless caves connected to countless passages and led to unknown areas. Shi Yang and Shang Yingyu walked through the passages. Seeing more turns, they somehow felt lost. Shi Yang paused and closed his eyes to sense instead of moving around aimlessly. The center of the holy mountain sent out a surging life energy that vibrated his soul. It was like the sea of life that was immense and unimaginable. It was even more robust than the oldest immemorial living beings. It was like the life magnetic field of hundreds or thousands of incipient God realm warriors combining. Shi Yang had a concussion. He seemed to see the unknown divine light shining on his sea of consciousness. Follow me. His eyes radiated brilliant divine light. Thinking for a while, he grabbed Shang Yingyu's small, soft hand. He could clearly feel her shivering. Shang Yingyu wiggled as she was shy. Eventually, she didn't resist anymore and let him clutch her hand and follow him. In the deep and dark cave, so many complex passages connected to each other and lead to different areas. The gloomy pressure in this place made people insecure. They felt like they were taking steps to death. Shi Yang couldn't see that Shang Yingyu was uncomfortable. In this dim-lit cave, he couldn't see Shang Yingyu blushing either. She was slightly shivering though. The center of the holy mountain had a giant ancient tree that was firmly rooted filled each corner of this majestic mountain. This big tree was like the spirit bell that connected the underworld and the sea of stars. Its thick branches jutted into the rock passages. It looked like the imposing mountain was just a cover of this ancient tree that protected the tree. That was the meaning of its existence. The ancient tree had transparent, fulgent branches like real jade. A five-colored light like a rainbow was moving through the branches, radiating magnificently. If this ancient tree were resized billions of times, it would look like the essence chi ancient tree in the abdomen of any warrior. It seemed like the essence chi ancient tree, the source of energy in the warrior's body, had been created with this ancient tree as the model. Haig, MIA, and Phelps were in a corner of the holy mountain where the branches had reached through the rock passages. Kang Yun was with Cecilia in another corner. Audrey, Jiao Shan, Jiao Hai, and the others walked together while Hassan stayed alone in another area. All of them were about to reach the center of the mountain. As they were scattering in different directions, they didn't see each other as if they had a net blinding them. From the mountain foot, they had encountered and killed some warriors before they got into the caves. They moved around the rock passages. Eventually, they were about to reach the important area inside the mountain. It was a vast wonderland inside the mountain where a giant ancient tree grew. They could see many guiding fruits hanging on the thick branches. 10,000 years later, those guiding fruits would be the keys to bring the warriors into the ancient continent. Those fruits were currently ripening fast. Inside a bush of branches and leaves covered by the rainbow halos and in between the guiding fruits, a special fruit was hanging. It was just as big as a human fist, but it looked like a small figure of an ancient continent. It had clouds hovering on the surface, seas, deserts, and forest, and lots of beams of pure energy. With a close look, that fruit had everything an ancient continent had. It was ripening. As soon as Haig, Kang Yun, and Audrey had entered the passage, their co-souls continually sent them vibes and matched with the energy of that fruit. They had followed the trace of energy to head to that fruit. The massive life magnetic field and the unimaginably tremendous vitality that Shi Yang had sensed came from this fruit. It was like the combination of the souls of thousands of incipient God realm experts to release such a marvelous life energy fluctuation. However, it was just a fruit, a very special fruit. Time flew fast. When Shi Yang and Shong Yingyu were heading to the wonderland inside the mountain, Kang Yun, Haig, and Audrey were scattered and waiting in different corners. After an unknown time, Haig, Audrey, and Kang Yun had moved almost at the same time and quickly headed to that strange land inside the mountain. Shadows started to emerge and gathered in the area of thick mist. The ancient tree in that wonderland was so big that its branches and leaves towered over everything else. Rainbow light circulated around the crystal-like branches. Altogether, they made people feel like they were in the best dreamy land. When Haig, Audrey, and Kang Yun appeared in this area, they all looked at the same thing. They were all looking at the fruit that looked like a whole planet. They didn't care about the guiding fruits. Apparently, those fruits weren't their target. Genesis fruit. Kang Yun, Haig, and Audrey muttered. Their eyes became hot and their faces were resolute as if they had to get that thing at any cost. Hassan hid alone in the dark. He glumly watched them and said nothing like a ghost. No one knew what he had in his mind. Shi Yang and Shong Yingyu were still moving to this area. The fruit they called the Genesis fruit was taking the rainbow light inside the crystal branches to grow. Currently, it had many arches of rainbows above the surface. It looked like massive structures of this fruit were getting the last speck of material to be completed. And then, it would be time for the birth of a new continent. Oh! Haig and Audrey studied Kang Yun, their faces astounded. Kang Yun smiled and said curtly, "You guys want the Genesis fruit." "I do too." Audrey's face turned cold. "You are a member of the heavenly monster tribe?" Kang Yun smiled again. He nodded and bowed modestly. "I'm from the White Tiger branch." Audrey was shocked. She became stern. When she looked at Kang Yun again, she became more cautious. The Imperial Dark Tribe had fought the Heavenly Monster Tribe for so many years. Audrey knew the Heavenly Monster Tribe well. The White Tiger branch was the best fighter of the Heavenly Monster tribe. They had made the Imperial Dark tribe pay a bloody price that year. Audrey didn't dare to look down on this branch's strength. Still, someone hasn't come. Haig was calm and indifferent. Where's the guy from the Immortal Demon clan? Audrey and Kang Yun put on dark faces. Chapter 1181, The World Tree. Chapter 1181, The World Tree. When Shi Yang got into the lake and Shong Yingyu cultivated outside, it took a long time. During this time, Kang Yun and Cecilia were the first warriors to enter the Holy Mountain. Haig and Audrey took their team and crossed a lot of barriers and death traps to collect many jades, crystals, and spirit herbs that were at original incipient grade. Eventually, they came to the foot of the mountain. Hassan of the Charteris family had experienced the lowest tide of a human's life. He had to bear different kinds of mind torments. He collapsed, endured, harmed himself, and finally sobered. No one knew what had happened to him after Shi Yang had left. But he became more fearsome. Kang Yun, Haig, Audrey, and Hassan had gathered at the Holy Mountain from 4 different directions. They had collected many original incipient grade materials along their way. And perhaps, they had created a connection with Desolate somehow. What they had encountered, only they could know. Nobody else could ever understand. They all walked to the Holy Mountain and entered the cave to reach the World Tree, the nucleus of the ancient continent. In legends, a tree of earth and heaven grew in the middle of the universe. It was called the World Tree. It was the critical point of earth and heaven energy that connected currents of energy in the universe. The essence chi ancient tree in the body of the warriors was the miniature version of the World Tree when it was created using this model. The World Tree was a perfect hub that gathered, connected earth and heaven energy, and communicated the 8 poles of the universe. The God Power Tree in the creature's body had the essence and secret of the World Tree. It could congregate energy from earth and heaven. The veins in a warrior's body were the branches of the ancient tree in their abdomen. Their veins filtered, refined, and compressed the energy, creating the God Power and Essence Chi. The God Power and Essence Chi watered the God Power Tree or the Essence Chi ancient tree and filled the branches with energy. When each branch of the tree was full of pure energy, the warrior would break into another realm. Their tree would grow more. Rumors said that if the World Tree broke or shattered, the energy of this universe would become chaotic. Disasters would occur to earth and heaven. The God Power Tree in the warriors' bodies would break altogether. However, creatures in this world didn't know much about the World Tree. Most of them had little knowledge about things in this cosmos. Only the Immortal Demon clan, the God clan, the Imperial Dark tribe, and the Heavenly Monster tribe had a better and clearer knowledge of the World Tree. Only they knew that the World Tree was the nucleus of Desolate. Considering Desolate a unique living form, the roots of the World Tree pierced into the ground of Desolate while its top touched the sky. Its countless branches were the veins of Desolate and the World Tree was the God Power Tree of Desolate. After 10,000 years, the World Tree bore a Genesis fruit. This kind of fruit was condensed by the nucleus of the World Tree. To Kang Yun, Haig, Audrey, and Shi Yang, the warriors that had fused with the origin, the Genesis fruit could be the nucleus of their co-soul. If anyone of Kang Yun, Haig, Audrey, and Shi Yang could absorb the Genesis fruit into their co-soul, the ancient continent that connected to them could be filled with energy rapidly. It could gather the remnant energy in outer space 100 times faster. The creatures of that ancient continent would be revived after being given the new, powerful competence. In the river of time in this vast universe, the God clan, Immortal Demon clan, Heavenly Monster tribe, and Imperial Dark tribe had taken turns to become powerful. In one era, only one of them could become the overlord. In fact, it had a close relationship with the Genesis fruit. The reason why the God clan could subdue and destroy the bloodthirsty force 10,000 years ago was that the chief of the God clan who had also fused with the origin of ancient God continent had taken the Genesis fruit in Desolate. He had revived ancient God continent and boosted all the members of the God clan. At that time, the 3 ancient continents that were the cradles of the Heavenly Monster tribe, the Imperial Dark tribe, and the Immortal Demon clan were like lamps running out of oil. Without the external force to refill them once again, they could still recover, but it took a really long time. The Genesis fruit could change all of these. The core members of the four races and the elderly precursors all knew about the Genesis fruit, which was born every 10,000 years in Desolate. This fruit could affect the position of the four races in the next 10,000 years in this universe. They had a saying like this: any race that could have the Genesis fruit could rule the cosmos for 10,000 years. It was really crucial. Today, after 10,000 years, a new Genesis fruit was born. The four ancient continents were now exhausted. They were all in need of this fruit to supply the vitality and the new boost for the entire race. If Haig got the Genesis fruit, the God Clan would still be the overlords of this universe. Giving them 10,000 more years would allow them to seize the entire cosmos in their hands. They could even hunt the Heavenly Monster Tribe, Imperial Dark Tribe, and Immortal Demon Clan down to the last member. If the Heavenly Monster Tribe, Imperial Dark Tribe, and Immortal Demon Clan wanted to rise again, they had to suppress the God Clan. To do that and become the next ruler of the universe, they had to take the Genesis fruit. Kang Yoon, Haig, and Audrey gazed at the Genesis fruit and accumulated energy to prepare for a battle to take the fruit. MIA, Phelps, and 11 warriors of the God Clan stood by Haig and looked at Jiao Hai, Jiao Shan, Mo Fu, and Wu Feng coldly. Quietly, they had determined their opponents. They had a bloody battle by the foot of the holy mountain. Both sides had to bear a significant loss and leave some corpses back there. The coming battle was crucial to the future of their entire clans. Everybody had to be cautious to gain the chance for their parties. Kang Yoon of the Heavenly Monster Tribe, Audrey of the Imperial Dark Tribe, and Haig of the God Clan was here. They were waiting for the moment for the Genesis fruit to ripen. Still, there was one of the four races that hadn't arrived yet. Audrey knew that Shi Yang had encountered something really bad. From Cecilia, Kang Yoon understood that Shi Yang might have had some magical encounter. He had paid attention, but as the Genesis fruit was almost ripe, he became restless. As his heavenly monster identity was exposed, the relationship between him and Audrey shattered. When the battle happened, Audrey was going to make him her primary target. Kang Yoon understood that when facing the Heavenly Monster Tribe, the God Clan and Imperial Dark Tribe were going to join hands despite their past resentment. This had happened before. Among the four great races, God Clan and Imperial Dark Tribe used to have a close relationship for a long time. When the Imperial Dark Tribe and the Heavenly Monster Tribe had a bloody war, God Clan would help the Imperial Dark Tribe to defeat the Heavenly Monster Tribe. From that time, the Heavenly Monster Tribe had learned from experience. They discreetly created an alliance with the haughty Immortal Demon Clan. They had cooperated with the race that had never shaken hands with anyone else. During the racial war, the Imperial Dark Tribe had depended on the God Clan's power and the God Clan had counted on them to attack the Immortal Demon Clan. They all had benefited from this alliance. On the other hand, the Heavenly Monster Tribe and the Immortal Demon Clan, the other two of the four great races, one didn't know how to plot or plan a conspiracy while the other was too arrogant to join hands with anybody to resist their enemies. That was why they were often defeated. After so many years, the Heavenly Monster Tribe had finally recognized that they needed allies. Before Kang Yoon came here, he had talked to a precursor of the Immortal Demon Clan. He knew Shi Yang's existence. Right from the beginning, he had treated Shi Yang as his best ally. However, right in the most critical time, his ally disappeared mysteriously. As he didn't know whether Shi Yang could make it or not, Kang Yoon became restlessly worried. The Heavenly Monster Tribe should be eliminated first. Haig gave a faint smile and looked at Audrey. Our two clans used to cooperate. We have a secret treaty. I thought you know about that, right? Audrey nodded, her cold eyes gazing at Kang Yoon as she said, I know the value of that treaty. The Heavenly Monster Tribe is always our clan's mortal enemy. I know what to do. She pointed her spear at Kang Yoon. The Heavenly Monster Tribe and the Imperial Dark Tribe had a deep grudge. When she knew Kang Yoon's real identity, she had made up her mind not to spare his life. If it were Shi Yang instead of Kang Yoon, it would be much better. Audrey thought. The Imperial Dark Tribe and the Immortal Demon Clan didn't have anything in relation. Although the Immortal Demon Clan was the archenemy of the God Clan and the Imperial Dark Tribe used to help the God Clan to deal with the Immortal Demon Clan, it was a very long time ago. In this era, the God Clan was so strong. Although Haig was excellent, if she joined hands with Shi Yang, it wouldn't be a big burden. Anyway, ever since she knew that Shi Yang was from the Immortal Demon Clan, she thought of this idea. It was too bad, Shi Yang didn't come. Both Audrey and Kang Yun had to sigh because of this. On the mountain where mist hovered above a wonderland grew a massive tree that had towered everything else. The guiding fruits hung in the tree branches started to ripen. Haig and Audrey suddenly aimed at Kang Yun. They had established an agreement shortly. They wanted to kill Kang Yun first. This incident was beyond people's estimation. Didn't we want to destroy the God Clan? Cecilia walked to Shuo Jiao, Jiao Hai, and Wu Feng. Seeing Audrey look at Kang Yun with her cold face, she frowned and hissed. Kang Yun isn't an ordinary individual. He's the mortal enemy of our Imperial Dark Tribe. I have to kill him first to ease my mind, said Audrey coldly. I won't let you guys join this. Don't worry. Don't rush. After I destroy Kang Yun, I will do what I've promised you. Let's see the situation first. Haig turned around to order MIA and Phelps. The members of the God Clan stepped back, waiting in silence with solemn faces. Rattle, rattle. Some crispy noises arose when a bony figure appeared not far from Kang Yun. Harson, Harson. Haig and Audrey hissed. The members of the God Clan and Cecilia's team also looked at the warrior who had just appeared with an odd face. Even Kang Yun, Audrey, and Haig couldn't find where Harson had been hiding. In fact, after Harson had fought Shi Yang in the desert, he had gone missing. MIA, Phelps, and the warriors of the God Clan had tried to search for him. They got nothing. They thought that Harson was dead. However, right at the critical point of time, Harson reappeared strangely. The dangerous aura emitted from him was much denser than before. It's good that you came here in time. It seems that the mighty heaven wants to help our clan by giving us another 10,000 years of wealth and prosperity. Haig calmed down and smiled. Although he didn't like Harson, he knew Harson was really strong. Seeing Harson at this moment, he felt relieved and happy. He believed that with Harson here, he could take the Genesis fruit, which would give the God Clan another 10,000 years of wealth. He didn't see Harson's abnormality. Chapter 1182, Crazy Harson. Chapter 1182, Crazy Harson. Harson's sudden appearance had caught people's attention. Harson's motive would determine the trend of the coming battle. The God warriors cheered up. Even Haig, Phelps, and MIA could ease their minds now. As they all knew how tremendous Harson was, they knew that Harson was strong enough to deal with Audrey or Kang Yun. With Harson's participation, the God Clan would definitely have the chance to harvest the Genesis fruit, which would make them strong for the next 10,000 years. However, Haig didn't see Harson's strange bearings. After Harson appeared, he didn't look at Audrey or Kang Yun. His eyes were glued to Haig. Harson's eyes became dark as if the white part of his eyes slowly turned black. Looking at him at this moment, everybody thought that they were watching something incredibly terrible. Harson, MIA called, her face tense and restless. What's wrong with you? She was the first person to notice Harson's abnormality. Many years ago in the death trap of the God Clan, MIA had seen this appearance of Harson. His eyes were completely dark and they had no sclera. MIA thought that Harson was dead and a demogon had possessed him. However, right after that moment, Harson had transformed from a wimpy kid to a bloodthirsty madman. He had killed everybody else except MIA. Harson could hardly recover later. But then, he had turned into a completely different person that MIA couldn't recognize. After so many years, seeing Harson like that one more time, MIA felt her hair rising on the back of her head. And only MIA could see Harson's abnormality. Haig, Phelps, Audrey, and Kang Yun didn't see anything strange. They just frowned, looking at Harson and waiting for his next move. Watch Harson. Everybody be aware of him, MIA shouted hoarsely all of a sudden. Haig's pupils shrank. Audrey and Kang Yun changed their faces in fear. A terrifyingly evil energy surged like a rising tide. It grumblingly burst out like an erupting volcano from Harson's body. Rumble. Rumble. 18 viscous bloodlight columns shot up to the air from his body. Each of them was as big as a towering tree that surrounded Harson. A kind of energy that could distort the whole world diffused from Harson and affected the entire space inside the mountain. White bone blood refining ghost grave. Haig, MIA, and the others couldn't help but shout. The group of the God Clan's warriors was scared and perplexed. Harson, what the heck are you doing? Haig thundered as he was outraged. I know you don't like me, but it's related to our entire clan. Even if you hate me more, just wait until we eliminate the opponents. We will put an end to our story. What are you going to do now? Attracting the geniuses of the significant star areas to the ancient continent so the God Clan could kill them at once was the plan that Haig had proposed. It was an important event to prove his leadership to the elders of the God Clan. As long as his plan was successful, he could be sure about his chief position of the God Clan in the near future. For this purpose, Haig had been calmly planning everything. He could endure Harson's bad behaviors and he could even take a step back when he saw Harson in the ancient continent. All was for his big goal. However, as Harson was using the white bone blood refining ghost grave at this moment, he was definitely out of his mind. This evil formation was going to collapse people's minds and make them kill each other. Even the god warriors would kill each other because of this evil formation. Once it was activated, they couldn't stop. Haig didn't know why Harson had to do that. Although Harson was insane and bloodthirsty, it was just to deal with others. He had never attacked warriors from the same clan. However, today Harson looked utterly crazy. It seemed like he had lost his mind completely, so he wasn't going to even spare his own people. But the thing that made them more dumbstruck was that Harson didn't have any subordinate here with him and he still could use the white bone blood refining ghost grave. Moreover, his power seemed to increase tremendously. All the warriors of the God Clan became restlessly insecure. They all knew how dangerous the evil formation of the Charteris family was. They knew that this family was the bloody lance of the God Clan who had destroyed the enemies of the God Clan everywhere. Today, Harson used his most dangerous evil formation to drag them to death. This thought had struck them out of their wits. After Harson had emerged, he said nothing but directly used the white bone blood refining ghost grave. Instantaneously, the tombstone appeared above his head and activated the evil formation. Everybody felt their souls sinking deep into that bloody gravestone and no matter how hard they wiggled, they couldn't get out. Kang Yoon, Haig, and Audrey weren't exceptions. Feeling the strange commotion of their soul altars, they couldn't hide their great fear. It wasn't the first time that they were trapped in this evil formation. Kang Yoon had experienced it before. Audrey had also sunk in it when she neglected Shi Yang's advice and tried to get through the barrier. At that time, all of Harson's troopers were still alive and strong. However, the power of their formation at that time wasn't as strong as what he had now. What did it mean? It meant that after Harson had fought Shi Yang in the desert, his power had increased furthermore. He was incredibly strong. Kang Yoon and Audrey discolored in fright. They thought that this madman Harson was much tougher than Haig. His insanity and unpredictable movement were unidentified factors. Harson sat cross-legged under the bloody stone grave. The towering blood column stood by him, released viscous bloodlight, and created the blood sea where there was a lot of sinister energy that could twist minds, wear out people's wills, and erode their souls. The other warriors began to lose their minds. Mo Fu and Wu Feng were panic-stricken. Gradually, they started to show their fangs. MIA, Phelps, and the warriors of the God Clan couldn't escape this trap. Shortly after, their eyes showed their madness. They started to attack the people standing next to them. They didn't recognize whether they were their clansmen or the best buddies. Inside the formation, Kang Yoon, Haig, and Audrey, the warriors with the origin, shouldn't have been affected. However, it was unknown why their soul altars, souls, and even god powers became restless while they were shrouded in the blood sea. Although they were still sane, Harson's world had affected them. Their powers were restrained. They couldn't urge or use any ability. Kang Yoon, Haig, and Audrey discolored in fright when they recognized the situation. The warriors who had fused with the origin could swagger in this world as their powers Upanishads weren't often bound to natural principles. They had proven this in the ancient continent. However, Hassan's evil formation had affected them right now and retrained their abilities and energy. What was going on? They all grimaced and tried to figure out how Hassan did it. Desolate. It's the special magnetic field of Desolate. Oh gosh, Hassan has gotten the approval of Desolate. Kang Yun shouted. His clothes were torn and then turned into ashes when he transformed into a massive, majestic white tiger. His murderous, imposing aura diffused from his body. This tiger had the imperial mark of the heavenly monster tribe with an astonishing dignity. Kang Yun had transformed into his true form. Kang Yun's words had made Audrey and Haig baffled before waking them up. Only Desolate's power could affect them. If Hassan could do that, he must have received Desolate's approval or something magical. That was how he could use the evil formation to bind them. Haig roared and turned into his undying god bod with fish-scale armor and spikes all over his body. Different from Kang Yun's and Haig's transformation, Audrey's soul altar spun and her graceful body faded out. Amazingly, she had become something magically unreal. She looked like a departed spirit or a reflection, which didn't seem tangible. Making the god body become nothingness was a strange but marvelous ability that only the purest Imperial Dark Warriors could do. After their bodies had turned into oblivion, physical attacks couldn't touch them. Only soul attacks could affect them. And when speaking about soul attacks, the Imperial Dark Tribe didn't have a rival in this vast universe. The body of nothingness was an exclusive power of the Imperial Dark Tribe. It was as strong as the undying god body, the immortal demon body, and the true form of the heavenly monster tribe. After they realized that Hassan was recognized by Desolate and that he had received something good from Desolate, Kang Yun, Haig, and Audrey had become stern. They all transformed to prepare their best to counter. At the same time, MIA, Phelps, Mo Fu, Wu Feng, Jiao Shan, Jiao Hai, and the others were attacking each other unconsciously. Their souls had fallen into the hands of the enemy. While the other experts of different star areas were surrounding the world tree, Hassan interfered and sank them into madness. Right now, Shang Yingyu and Shi Yang were still dashing through the rock passage. Shi Yang had followed the magical life magnetic field to reach the world tree. He wanted to know what was going on there. The ring spirit of the blood vein ring on his finger had sent him a simple advice. The world tree bore the Genesis fruit. Take it and absorb it into your co-soul. However, the ring spirit didn't describe the world tree or the Genesis fruit. It just told him what to do and what his goal was. It didn't tell him what benefits his goal could bring him. Afterward, Shi Yang had tried to contact the ring spirit, but he got nothing in the end. He immediately noticed that it was in its critical time of fusing memories. It wasn't easy for the ring spirit to spare him a second and give him new instructions. He believed that the ring spirit wouldn't harm him, so he had his new target. Get the Genesis fruit and fuse it with the co-soul. He took Shang Yingyu and moved wildly through the rock passages. While his soul felt that tremendous life energy fluctuation, the god power in his body surged like a flooding current. Eventually, Shi Yang and Shang Yingyu had almost reached the world inside the mountain where the world tree grew. He suddenly stopped and said sternly, "It doesn't feel right. You should stay here. Don't go with me." "What? Why?" Shang Yingyu frowned. White bone blood refining ghost grave. It's Hassan's white bone blood refining ghost grave. It is much stronger than the time we'd encountered him. Taking a deep breath, Shi Yang hissed, "Once you get there, your soul will collapse. You will become a wild beast that only knows how to kill until you die." Shang Yingyu's soft body shivered. She halted and remembered the situation that they had experienced. She felt a chill deep in her heart. "You should be careful," she advised. "Don't worry." Shi Yang darkened his face and entered the thick blood mist. Chapter 1183, I'm helping you. Chapter 1183, I'm helping you, _ A gory gravestone was floating in the middle of a viscous blood sea. Hassan was sitting neatly under that gravestone. Surrounding Hassan were Haig, Audrey, and Kang Yun. However, they weren't in good condition. Although they had transformed, their auras and energy were disordered. Their spirit, soul, and chi seemed to be bound and their souls were shivering continuously. However, at least they were still sane and didn't fall into a slaughtering madness. They were still struggling to resist the evil energy invading their minds. Phelps, MIA, Cecilia, Wu Feng, and the others had a worse situation. Because they didn't have the origin, they had been dragged into insanity. Their eyes were garnet like they were starving beasts that saw fresh, warm meat. No one could control themselves anymore. Seeing Cecilia, Shi Yang relaxed his tense nerves, but right after that, his face darkened. It was the same white bone blood refining ghost grave, but Shi Yang was affected. He was the only one that the white bone blood refining ghost grave couldn't control. Shi Yang had studied each of Xian Shan's bones. He understood the evil formation and its working principles. At the same time, Shi Yang's blood soul sea had the same effects as this formation. That was why the blood sea couldn't affect him. He calmly walked to the center of the formation and approached Hassan. "What do you want?" "I'm helping you." Hassan hadn't said a word since he had arrived in this area. He talked for the first time after he came here. His voice was low and pitiful like he was an evil spirit crying. Hearing him, people felt so uncomfortable that they had goosebumps. "Helping me?" Shi Yang was astounded. "Right. I'm helping you eliminate your opponents. I will help you kill all of them. In Desolate, I will help you kill all the creatures present here. After we leave this place, I'll help you kill any race or clan and clean this entire world. You tell me. Am I helping you?" Hassan chuckled evilly. "I don't know what you're talking about." Shi Yang knitted his brows tightly. "It seems like you haven't understood it. Because you're the heir of the Bloodthirsty Master, you'll get to know what kind of responsibilities you need to shoulder later. Don't worry." Hassan laughed evilly and said, "First, we should kill all the people here. Kill them all and leave no one. It's the responsibility you should take. I've helped you start it. You should end it now. End it. Yes, kill all the people here. Including you. If you want, you can do that. Of course, I'm not gonna let you do that easily." Shi Yang quieted down. Hassan looked at him, his eyes showing many deep meanings. He didn't talk as if he was waiting for Shi Yang to consider. After a long time, Shi Yang answered, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what the successor of the Bloodthirsty Master has to shoulder. But I can tell you one thing, I'm Shi Yang. I'm not controlled by anyone or bound to anything. I will do what I want to do. If I don't want to do something, I don't care about anybody's responsibility." Then, he walked past Hassan, approaching Cecilia who looked disheveled and gathered his god power to grab her wrist. The starlight chain tied Cecilia's graceful body and brought her out of the white bone blood refining ghost grave. It brought her to Shong Yingyu standing outside. Shong Yingyu immediately took out the icy soul cold crystal and used its icy power to control wild Cecilia. Shong Yingyu had to do that to prevent Cecilia from harming her. While Cecilia was frozen, her extreme metal state ceased. She slowly recovered. "Oh, you know how to take care of the glamour. Anyway, you're a little conservative, though." Hassan grinned and shook his head. "It seems like I can't count on you. Your mind isn't strong enough. You can't complete the mission. I'll help you." "Hassan, you're a member of the God Clan. If you dare to act rashly, our clan will never spare your life," Haig said coldly. "Ha ha ha, I'm now not a god warrior anymore." Hassan laughed and pounded his chest, crying. "Today, my body has the essence of Xian Shan's bones. Xian Shan was an immortal demon. What am I now? Crossbreed," Haig shouted. Hassan laughed crazily. The floating gory gravestone above his head created a world of blood and shrouded Haig directly. "Haig, you aren't eligible to be the future leader of the God Clan. You're too calm and sane. There are many things that keep you behind when you want to do something. You mind your superiors' opinions and you want admiration from your subordinates. You have too many restraints. Your heart is tied. At most, you can only keep the God Clan at its current power. You will never bring it a new future. Harson suddenly became so cold and he pressed each of his words. Only I can bring the God clan a new future. As long as I kill you, your co-soul with the origin of the ancient God continent will choose its new master. I'll become its new master. You think you can kill me? Looking at the bloody tombstone approach him, Haig's eyes turned bright white like a burning white flame. A brilliant white flame burst out from his entire body. The scale armor covering him turned silver white, which was very frightening. Billions of light beams shot out from his glabella. His light power Upanishad urged the power of 5 elements in earth and heaven to create the light divine boat of the God clan. Instantly, all the things binding him were cut off. Haig could move freely again. Bright white flames burst out from his body as he was gathering earth and heaven energy. The energy fluctuating from him was beyond the power of anyone present here. I'm the leader of our clan designated by the elders from the Book of Gods. From the day I was born, my life has resonated with ancient God continent. I'm the one who ancient God continent has chosen. Haig emerged above the blood sea and looked down at Harson and the others. He continued arrogantly, even when you were in your peak condition, the Charteris family didn't dare to let you fight with me. Do you know why? Because they know you will never defeat me. Although the burning purgatory power Upanishad of your family can boost your power by burning the soul and body, it's too bad, you still need a lot more to deal with me. Thump, 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 thump. Haig's heart beat frantically. Every time his heart beat, ancient God continent from far away also twitched. Every expert of the God clan in ancient God continent could recognize the vibes from the ground like a heartbeat. The earth cracked in some area as if an earthquake was about to happen. However, the experts of the God clan staying in the shrines built in ancient God continent who had their names written in the Book of Gods all had calm faces when they felt the tremors. They even smiled happily. If he could draw the consonants of the ancient continent, Haig's compatibility with the heaven flame origin had become almost perfect. They knew how powerful Haig could be in this state. Those extreme, famous experts of this universe knew how formidable Haig was currently. They understood that even if they came to fight Haig themselves, they could reluctantly subdue him but not kill him. It was because Haig had fused with the ancient continent completely and because the ancient continent was never going to be destroyed. In the God clan's history, not many people could reach this step in the river of time. If he could fuse and be one with the ancient continent, he could become immortal. He would never die and he could exist together with the ancient continent forever. They praised Haig as a rare prodigy. Compared to another warrior who had fused with ancient God continent, his compatibility with the flaming origin was much more thorough. That warrior had taken the Genesis fruit and brought 10,000 years of prosperity to the God clan. He had helped Go clan subdue the bloodthirsty force. However, although that warrior had high realm and profound power, he had to die because he couldn't fuse completely with the ancient continent. Haig could surpass that warrior to achieve the goal he couldn't even he had to spend his entire life. If Haig could wholly fuse with the ancient continent, he would never die. It meant that the God clan would have eternal prosperity. Every time Haig's heart beat, the energy in his god body became a bit stronger. It seemed like this process would never end. Shi Yang didn't know where Haig's power came from. But Audrey and Kang Yun knew it. Their faces grimaced as they were scared. Drawing the energy of the ancient continent and transferring it to his body to counter the enemy were the signs of a perfect state of fusion with the flaming origin. It was a miracle. If Haig got the Genesis fruit, which would help the ancient god continent gather the energy from outer space rapidly, he could continuously draw the energy of the ancient continent to become the most intimidating existence in this vast universe. Even the incipient god realm experts wouldn't be able to resist him. No one would be able to resist him. Everybody knew that Haig was excellent and that he was the pride of the God clan. However, they knew how formidable he was only when they fought him. Compared to him, many geniuses in the vast universe were like the light of a firefly under the radiant sunlight that wasn't worth mentioning. Shi Yang, Kang Yun, and Audrey wore stern faces. They were astonished by Haig's performance. If Shi Yang hadn't reached third sky of ethereal god realm and his soul, spirit, and chi wasn't in its best condition, he would be subdued by Haig's intimidation. Kang Yun and Audrey were affected. I know your fusion has reached this phase. If it were 1,000 years ago or later, I'm sure I wouldn't be your opponent, Harson said distantly. Unfortunately, it's the time when the ancient continent is at its weakest. Although your fusion is deep enough, how much energy could you borrow from the continent? Harson suddenly burst out laughing wildly. Especially since it's desolate. It's not anywhere else in this cosmos. In this place, I can kill you. His god body dried up quickly and made him look like a terribly evil man who had a body made of only bones. He didn't have a bit of flesh but a skin bag covering his skeleton. This image of Harson was so fearsome. The skeleton of his body sounded of crack. His 10 fingers, which were like dry claws, made 3 magical hand seals. A gory claw emerged from under the blood sea, which had strange, evil drawings on the joints and knuckles. It brought together the power and the will that could destroy any creature. The claw was like a flower that swallowed Haig and his light divine boat. It dragged him into a deep place of the blood sea. Chapter 1184, The Cold Eye of a Bystander. Chapter 1184, The Cold Eye of a Bystander. Haig and his light divine boat were dragged to a deep place in the blood sea. They disappeared altogether with the bone claw. Harson was still floating under the bloody tombstone. His eyes were jet black and were strangely and coldly scanning people in the blood sea. Kang Yun and Audrey were trying their best to resist the evil energy that was invading their souls. Kang Yun had transformed into the white tiger and was lying on the ground. His massive body quivered as if he was gathering energy. Audrey's slim body had turned into nothing. Like a departed spirit, she was floating and bobbing in the blood sea, which looked so unreal. In this form, no physical attack could touch Audrey. The abilities of power Upanishad couldn't hurt her either. Unfortunately, this blood sea had the power to erode the soul. It could seep into her soul altar and attack her soul. Anyway, Audrey had mastered the soul-class power Upanishad. As she was congregating her power to resist the evil mind invasion, her eyes were always clear and bright. She didn't have any puzzled gleam. She seemed to finally stabilize her condition. In the blood sea, Phelps, MIA, and the other warriors of the God Clan were killing each other. Mo Fu, Wu Feng, Jiao Shan, and Sho Jiao had lost their minds completely. They couldn't tell if the others were their enemies or friends, so they just kept fighting until death. People started to die in this strange land where the thick mist was hovering. Every time a warrior died, Shi Yang was startled as he gathered the essence chi from them. Shi Yang looked at Harson, his face stern. He had quietly mobilized his power and was ready to counter any new incident. Harson's black eyes still gazed at a place deep in the blood sea. He didn't pay attention to Audrey or Kang Yun. His primary target was Haig. Haig had sunk into the blood sea, but the vitality from him was still robust. Apparently, Haig was still alive and he was still gathering more power. Thump, thump, thump. Everybody could hear his heart beating vigorously. After every beat, Haig could draw energy from the ancient continent to strengthen himself. If he had enough time to prepare, no one could estimate the level of his god power. You should kill them. Harson rose his hand and pointed at Kang Yun and Audrey. Then, all of a sudden, he jumped into the blood sea. The gory tombstone had come with him. A tremendous blood wave abruptly rose. Energy columns in blood hue shot out and dyed this world crimson. The ivory-white divine light connecting the powers of 5 element emerged in a pentagonal formation and raised above the blood sea. Haig stood in the center of the magical pentagonal formation like a heartless god. Flames danced in his eyes. A dark gold orb appeared in front of his glabella, which had a lot of lines and drawings. Vaguely, that orb was a miniature figure of ancient god continent that bounced accordingly to Haig's beating heart. When the globe appeared in front of his glabella, Haig wasn't bound or affected by the blood sea anymore. His body had the energy that would never cease. Your burning purgatory makes you pay with your flesh and soul to increase your power quickly. However, since I've fused with the ancestral star, I don't need to sacrifice anything to absorb the energy from the ancestral star to refill my body. What do you have to fight me? The divine pentagonal formation under Haig's body suddenly became dazzling as it released halos of radiant divine light. They moved and swirled around Haig continually. Energy shot out fast under Haig's feet and created the power to seal this world. After his energy had diffused, the blood sea diluted and faded away. Slowly, everything had calmed down. Beams of blood chi have washed away and were destroying the evil mind-invading energy. Shortly after, the entire blood sea had vanished besides the bloody gravestone above Hassan's head. Haig stood on the pentagonal divine formation as if he had put himself in a dreamy star domain where he was the god of the universe. Each move of his carried immense power of the ancient continent, which would last forever. Sky Cage. Haig closed his arms as if he had caught something in his palm and pressed it. Everybody could see that when Haig closed his arms, the bloody gravestone above Hassan's head was pressed smaller. It looked like a stone tablet that was contorted by the giant hand of an angel. Bones of Hassan's skeletal body cracked as if they were about to shatter. The dark red bones tore his skin and jutted out of his body under the pressure. Hassan looked pitifully horrendous. He didn't look like either a human or a demon. Now you know why the elders of our clan chose me instead of you. Haig's face was cold and indifferent. He used a nonchalant voice to continue, I am gifted. I am the chosen one by the ancestral star. Facing me, you are encountering the progress of an entire race. It's just in vain. You will never succeed. Boom, boom, boom. While talking, Haig pressed his hands together. Hassan's bones broke entirely. His body deformed as if there were two mountains crushing him. The bloody gravestone directly turned into a cluster of blood gas that exploded and then stormed into Hassan's skeleton. The warriors who were fighting slowly resumed their sanity. Some of them had terrible wounds that were deep to the bone. Some of them were now cold corpses or dried ones without a drop of water as if they have been weathered for years. What's going on? Ah, that mad dog Hassan again. He didn't spare his own kind. Too heartless. He doesn't have a bit of humanity in his heart anymore. Warriors of different races cursed him in fright and rage. Mia, the one who had a close relationship with Hassan, was also outraged. She glared at him maliciously. Hassan had stirred up a common hostility. Kang Yun and Audrey had gotten rid of the restraint of the evil mind-invading power first. They exchanged looks and formed a strange tacit understanding. Roar. Kang Yun roared like a wild tiger getting out of the cage. His murderous aura was released as sharp as a lance. Light flashed in his tiger eyes like torches. His iron-like body rolled and he attacked Hassan. Crack, crack, crack. Kang Yun dragged Hassan's shattered body and tore him into pieces. Audrey floated with her hollow body. The image of her soul altar emerged in her glabella, which was a dozen times smaller than the real one. Her soul altar looked like an exquisite crystal pendant where billions of soul threads gushed out and created a net that covered Hassan's head. The soul threads squeezed and pulled, trying to crush Hassan's soul altar. Kang Yun and Audrey were mortal enemies. These two races had fought for so many years. They had never been calmly talking to each other. However, because of Hassan the madman, the two archenemies had joined hands to kill Hassan and erase this unidentified factor. Mia watched everything coldly. She saw Haig explode Hassan's bones and Kang Yun tearing his body apart. Eventually, Audrey had used her soul ability to wind his soul altar. Mia stood calmly right from the beginning. She found that Hassan today wasn't the Hassan she had known. Although Hassan was wild and brutal, he would only treat his enemies that way. He would never attack his own kind. She knew that Hassan still made mistakes. He hadn't grown up yet. But currently, Hassan wasn't a member of the God clan anymore in her eyes. He was a maniac who didn't spare his fellows. He had become a brutal butcher that even Mia wanted to destroy. She didn't agree with Hassan. Looking at Haig, Audrey, and Kang Yun attack him, she didn't say a word to tell Haig to show mercy or ask the other warriors to help. She thought that Hassan shouldn't continue to live. Everybody quieted down. Shi Yang did the same. However, his silence was different from the others. While he was staying quiet, his soul altar was ready. He had always paid attention to Hassan's vital signs. He thought that Hassan wouldn't make something that big without a decent ending. The reason why he stood indifferently was that Hassan hadn't died yet. Shi Yang didn't know why he could feel a bigger danger from Hassan. He knew that Hassan had merged with Xian Shan's will and bones. Besides the death power Upanishad, he had mastered the corpse chi of Frederick. He could use the corpse chi to urge his god power and resurrect himself from death. Shi Yang had seen it once. He thought that Hassan would resurrect once again because his soul altar hadn't been destroyed yet, and although his bones were ground, they weren't burned to ashes. Hassan's blood hadn't vanished even one drop. His terrifying energy was still moving in his blood. Quietly, he was using the corpse chi to create another miracle. But it wasn't what had scared Shi Yang. Shi Yang could vaguely feel that this holy mountain, this world tree inside the mountain, and even this ancient continent, had somehow favored Hassan and used a method that only Hassan could feel to transfer energy into his body. Just like when Shi Yang's acupuncture points were gathering essence chi of the dead, which no one could recognize, Desolate was caring about Hassan with its special treatment. Haig didn't know it. Kang Yun and Audrey couldn't sense or guess. As the experts of the Big Star area kept silent with a cold face, they all thought that Hassan was dead upon looking at him. Audrey, we should eliminate the one from the heavenly monster tribe, Haig reminded her all of a sudden. Good then, Audrey gently nodded. Her eyes now gazed at Kang Yun. Kang Yun wasn't panicked. He guffawed and transformed back to his fat, human body. He appeared by Shi Yang, turning to him and squinting his small eyes. You choose one between Haig and Audrey. Haig didn't change his countenance. Audrey darkened her face, talking coldly and darkly. Shi Yang, this is a matter between the Imperial Dark Tribe and the Heavenly Monster Tribe. I hope you stay away from this. I'm curious, Shi Yang frowned, if I stay aside, will you join Haig to kill Kang Yun? Audrey nodded. Then what? Shi Yang sounded surprised. Then you and I will join hands to kill Haig. And then we will have a brutal battle to take that Genesis fruit. Audrey quieted down. She had thought like that. Do you think it's practical? Shi Yang felt funny. Do you think Haig is that dumb to let me join hands with you and kill him? You think that things would develop as you thought? I know it isn't practical. You, Kang Yun, Haig and I, we're all here for the Genesis fruit. Not all of us can get the fruit. Only one can do it. No one could say what would happen or how to arrange this. Shi Yang suddenly jolted. He looked at the bones of Hassan and sensed quietly. He immediately had a chill in his heart. Chapter 1185, Replace the World. Chapter 1185, Replace the World. Hassan had turned into a pulp of broken bones and smashed flesh. However, something was changing subtly in that bloody mess. If Shi Yang hadn't cultivated death and life power Upanishad, and if he hadn't reached third sky of ethereal god realm, he wouldn't have been able to see that tiny but magical change. It seemed like a celestial hand was carefully and dedicatedly snatching the rolls of nature to help Hassan modify and build up each of his fiber muscles. It was making him even more perfect. Unbelievable. The soul threads that had nailed Hassan's soul altar were still pulling. However, they were bewitched by an unknown force. Thus, Audrey didn't recognize anything strange. The net woven by the soul threads to squeeze off Hassan's soul altar had become ineffective. Somewhere in the untold world, an energy had contacted Hassan and helped him urge another power in his skeleton, the corpse chi, to deceive Audrey, Kang Yun, and Haig. It had given Hassan a chance to resurrect. Kang Yun, Haig, and Audrey thought that Hassan was dead. The other members of the God clan and the outstanding warriors of the other star areas would never have thought that Hassan was having a marvelous transformation. In this area, only Shi Yang had cultivated death and life power Upanishad, which gave him a better sense of life magnetic field and life energy fluctuation. He could vaguely capture this tiny change. He had two options now. He could tell Kang Yun, Haig, and Audrey about this. He believed that they would forcefully kill Hassan and utterly kill him. Shi Yang was sure that even though the mysterious power had favored Hassan, Hassan wasn't going to be able to survive when Kang Yun, Haig, and Audrey attacked him at the same time. He had another option. He could choose to protect Hassan and give him time to finish his transformation and resurrect. Shi Yang kept silent as he was absorbed in his thoughts as he was weighing pros and cons. He had to study Hassan's resurrection case carefully to find the tendency that benefited him the most. Hassan wasn't a true member of the God clan anymore. Shi Yang could tell that when he tried to kill Haig and MIA. At the same time, Hassan seemed to not want to be on Shi Yang's side. He had something he had to fulfill and insist. Shi Yang didn't know from where he had this insistence. Shi Yang didn't know whether Hassan's insistence could be a threat to his future or not, but right now, Haig was too powerful. He wasn't so sure he could defeat this guy. Shi Yang had chosen his option. If your Imperial Dark Tribe can join hands with the God Clan, I can cooperate with Kang Yun. The God Clan is the mortal enemy of my immortal demon clan. When you joined him, you've become my enemy too. Shi Yang sighed and said to Audrey reluctantly, although I don't want it, I have to say that we're no longer each other's allies. He nodded to Kang Yun and said, I'm going to deal with Haig. Kang Yun smiled happily. Shi Yang turned around and looked at Wu Feng, Wu Bai, Zhao Shan, Zhao Hai, Shuo Zhao, and Mo Fu. You guys can choose to be with me and help resist MIA, Phelps, and the God Warriors. I can focus only on Haig then. Of course, you guys can choose to stay on Audrey's side. I'll follow you. Wu Feng, Wu Bai, Zhao Shan, Zhao Hai, and Shuo Zhao had always followed him, so they showed their attitude immediately. After Shang Yingyu and Cecilia had escaped the previous battle, of course, they wouldn't choose Audrey. They planned to follow Shi Yang always. Fuller and the other warriors who had been with Audrey all the time hesitated for a while before saying sorry to Audrey. We're sorry. We won't be friends with the God Clan. You've broken your promise when you joined Haig. Audrey had a glum gleam in her eyes. She finally recognized that while she didn't pay attention, Shi Yang had gained respect and admiration from other warriors. It turned out that Shi Yang had replaced her leadership in their minds. I can kill Hassan. It's easier to kill you, you know. Haig mocked and shook his head disdainfully. Being an immortal demon, you should try to live your life like a stray dog. You shouldn't be greedy for the Genesis fruit. You aren't really practical, are you? Haig was still standing in the center of the divine pentagonal formation. The orb of the ancient god continent sparkled in front of his forehead while the flames were dancing in his eyes. His heart didn't beat vigorously anymore, but it didn't mean that his energy was decreasing. Simply, he had gathered enough god power. He was now at his peak condition. Crack, crack, crack. Clear cracking sounds echoed from Shi Yang's bones. He had transformed into the immortal demon body in just a blink of an eye. The blood chi in his body surged massively. Each drop of his immortal demon blood was like a burning, erupting volcano that himmed the formidable power. The acupuncture points of his entire body became like a big river or a death trap with torrential negative energy. Instantly, his body shriveled and his eyes became crimson. While his god power was rocketing, the starlight above his head twinkled and shone on his head. He looked like he was holding the entire starry sky on his head. Dazzling light bright world. Haig hissed, his eyes cold and indifferent. He didn't have any glimpse of human emotions. His sane condition frightened people. The light divine boat shot out billions of light beams. However, they weren't straight lines. They were meandering ones like a halo that grouped with each other to create thousands of light formations above his head. They were triangular, rectangular, pentagonal, hexagonal, and even octagonal formations with the power of 5 elements. They could perform magical abilities thoroughly. Haig had used his light power Upanishad to chain the powers of 5 elements. His ethereal extent could perform everything that this world has. Just like the Creator, Haig could destroy everything with a single thought in his mind. This was the supernatural power that even the incipient God realm experts couldn't do. Haig had adjusted the divine formations to mobilize many mountains and lakes here. Blocks of cracked soils, trees of the forest, and pieces of shattered land made a downpour and covered every single inch of space around Shi Yang. Shi Yang's blood-red eyes became ferocious. As he knew space power Upanishad, he recognized that Haig had confined the space around him. Haig's magical world had invaded Shi Yang's room. Shi Yang couldn't use his space power Upanishad because the area he was now in wasn't familiar land anymore. It was the world that Haig had created by his divine light and the 5 elements power Upanishad. In this world, Haig was the sole god. Unless he had smashed this world, he would be confined in every aspect when he fought Haig. He couldn't use his best abilities of each power Upanishad. Haig could know every single move of his even before he carried it out. Haig could kill him easily. In this world, Haig was the god that could do everything. He could pour his energy endless into this world to do whatever he wanted. Haig was using his own world to replace the real world. Even incipient god realm experts couldn't perform this intimidating power. Haig was worth being the future leader of the God Clan. Although he was at ethereal God realm, he was already formidable. No wonder why he could defeat Hassan. Shi Yang finally took a real look at Haig's intimidation. He knew that Haig would be the most terrifying opponent of his life. If he couldn't defeat Haig, he would never ease his mind for the rest of his life. Space confinement. Use an unreal world to replace the real world. When Haig used his power Upanishad, it was like he was using the abilities of the eternal world. He could control the power of the universe and hold this entire space in his hands. The other warriors could see Shi Yang and Haig staying in a fantasy world. They could see the two of them clearly, but they couldn't feel any energy impact. However, from every move of Shi Yang and Haig in that fantasy world, they knew that the two were engaging in a fight. When Mia's team saw Haig confining Shi Yang in his world, they were baffled. However, they woke up immediately and surged their god power to spin the soul altar and release the ethereal extent. Their battle with Wu Feng's team began. We shouldn't stay idle. Kang Yun faced the sky and roared. He turned into his white tiger form, which was as big as a mountain. His energy was imposing and tyrannical, as if he could destroy the world with only one touch. Audrey snorted and floated up. The dark god imperial throne emerged and connected to the fearsome abyss of the underworld. She had summoned many ghosts and demons, the special creatures of the underworld, which could move agilely as she wished, like they were her real fingers. Cecilia and Shong Yingyu wore sad faces when they saw Shi Yang being confined in Haig's world. They wanted to help him, but they felt so helpless. They knew Haig's intimidation. They knew that Haig was the strongest known warrior of this current generation. He was even stronger than his precursors. His power was formidable yet mysterious. Although they were impressed with Shi Yang's power, they couldn't help but feel heavy-hearted when Shi Yang was facing Haig directly. Although Hassan was very frightening recently and he had scared them out of their wit, Hassan was defeated. Haig had destroyed him. As Shi Yang had fought Hassan in the desert, in the two women's points of view, Hassan would have the same capacity as Shi Yang because he had survived that battle. They deeply understood the meaning of this event. The two were so worried about Shi Yang. In Haig's world, there was light, earth, and heaven with 5 elements. The 5 elements were the basis of the world. They could produce everything. Haig's world was independent like a real world. Using light power to chain the 5 powers Upanishads of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, Haig had proven his innate endowment. No one could compare to him. At the same time, his learning capacity was unique. No wonder why the ancient god continent favored him. He was the designated successor, and the continent had proactively fused its origin with his soul. It was the recognition of earth and heaven for Haig. In Haig's world, Shi Yang was bound. He couldn't use the power of earth and heaven, so he was left to use only the energy of his body to resist. Galaxies appeared above the thick blood sea. Shi Yang bobbed in the blood sea and spun his soul altar, using the negative energy to create an evil tornado to wreak havoc in this fantasy world. His negative energy surged torrentially and filled with so many negative emotions. The deadly, brutal, desperate, fearful, destructive, resentful, and bloodthirsty emotions from his tornado were much more formidable than what Hassan had performed. Moreover, as Shi Yang had used the essence qi of the dead he had just taken in through his acupuncture points directly without refining, the evil power of this attack became more terrifying. When this kind of evil tornado attacked Haig's world, the power of negative moods had made this world look like doomsday. The void cracked and revealed space slits. It seemed like this world was about to crumble. Haig had to gather the energy of the ancient continent and condense his god power in the body to pour into his world to maintain the balance. He had to mend it continuously. Apparently, he had underestimated Shi Yang's power. While he and Shi Yang were fighting, the entire scene was disorderly and chaotic. Kang Yun and Audrey were battling while MIA, Phelps, and the God Warriors were fiercely fighting against Wu Feng and Shuo Zhao's team. No one paid attention to Harsun. The pulp of crushed flesh and broken bones had connected to each other and formed a body. It seemed like a hand in the untold world was sewing Harsun's body all together and helping him refine his body dedicatedly. Chapter 1186, Blood Sword Breaking Divine Boat. Chapter 1186, Blood Sword Breaking Divine Boat. In the immense, misty world where the world tree grew, almost all of the most outstanding prodigies of the current generation of the entire cosmos were fighting to the death with each other. They fought for the Genesis fruit and for the next 10,000 years of prosperity for their clan. This battle was very important to all of them. The winner would become king and the losers would have to kneel down in front of the victor for the next 10,000 years. In the fantasy world created by Haig's power Upanishad, Shi Yang stood neatly in his blood sea. The blood sea rippled its viscous waves. Upon layers, it supported him floating above the red surface. Brilliant outer space streamers crossed each other above his head like starlight chains, drawing fantastic images in the sky. They were complex and mysterious, hiding the essence of the everlasting galaxy. The blood mist hovered above the galaxy and the tornado of negative energy was wreaking havoc in this area. Desperate, resentment, fearful, bloodthirsty and other negative feelings were examples of the endless evilness in people's minds. They could nibble their hearts and dirty their souls. They could send people to a cold, deadly silent prison, making them eternally consigned to damnation. It was the death prison triggered by the death power. In Haig's world, the sea was crying and seething. The ground cracked and shattered. The mountains collapsed while the trees and forest were ground into powder. This world was gradually crumbling. Shi Yang had used his power Upanishad to destroy this world and send it back to the starting point. However, it wasn't that everything would turn out as he wanted. When the fantasy world corrupted, the pure energy of 5 elements flooded in from the horizon, the void, and even the abyss. The cycle of energy was generated and running continuously. It forcefully recreated the order of earth and heaven. It made the earth flat, the mountain stable, and the shattered things intact one more time. Someone had seized the role of the creature and gave everything a new life. Shi Yang had used his power to destroy while Haig used his power to mend things. With this world as the battlefield and their power Upanishad the basis, they had tried their best to fight each other. Shi Yang was destined to stay in a disadvantaged condition in this battle. His enemy had controlled this battlefield and taken all the advantages and better conditions. Haig was the god of this world. Every time things changed and every time Shi Yang congregated energy, it consumed the god power he had condensed in his god power ancient tree, the negative energy he had collected, and the combustion of his immortal demon blood. He couldn't collect a beam of earth and heaven energy here. It was different to Haig. In this world, Haig was the real god. He could gather earth and heaven energy as much as he wanted. He could continuously draw energy from the ancient continent to refill himself. Even though Haig had to consume his energy, it was much easier for him compared to Shi Yang. If it was a battle of attrition, there was no doubt that Shi Yang would lose. He couldn't risk his life with Haig. While the mountains, lakes, and even the ground were changing, a shining divine boat tore the sky just like the messenger of light coming to clean the dark. Loud explosions reverberated. Boom. Boom. The light divine boat had hundreds of thousands of magical formations carved on the body, which could join and combine into one entity. They carried the power of 5 elements and the in-depth meanings of earth and heaven. The divine boat tore the sky to come and brought with it the threat to crush creatures, mountains, and everything. It attacked Shi Yang directly. Galaxies created by Shi Yang's power were struck into pieces. The light divine boat had cut the starlight chains, which prevented them to reconnect. Even the crimson water of the blood sea started to evaporate when the holy light of the light divine boat shone on it. The water sizzled and vapored. This light divine boat represented Hague. It was the foundation of this world of light. Its role was like the world tree to desolate. It was the root or the heart. It wasn't wrong to say that the light divine boat was this world itself. If the divine boat were damaged, this world would be cracked accordingly. Shi Yang squinted. His blood-red eyes had 2 drops of blood vibrating and it looked really frightening. They were the garnet immortal demon blood, which looked as beautiful as precious gemstones. Having them in his eyes, Shi Yang had mobilized and used all the immortal demon blood in his body. Hague appeared deep in the sky like the projection of a massive god observing the world underneath. He said indifferently, "Kill." Swish. The light divine boat was like a venomous snake sticking its tongue out. The pointy tip of the boat opened and revealed the wooden white teeth that were biting Shi Yang. "Ah, not that easy." Shi Yang smiled ferociously. His red finger stroked the blood vein ring as gently as if he was touching his lover's skin. A strange emotion flashed in his eyes. Bang! The sound of a sharp weapon coming out of its sheath arose. A bloodlight pierced the sky and forcefully stabbed the light divine boat. The eyes on the broadsword opened. The incredibly evil energy flooded like the rising tide. The blood sword seemed to be able to break the horizon and this entire fantasy world. It stabbed the light divine boat. Swoosh! The light divine boat exploded. Beams of bloodlight bloomed and moved around like sharp blades cutting this world. The world that Hague had created shattered in just a moment. The light divine boat cracked. The sky was pierced through. Shi Yang returned to the real world in just a blink of an eye. The giant gory broadsword was like a sharp, bloodthirsty saber of a demogon, quietly floating above Shi Yang's head. A beam of bloodlight from the sword tip seemed to connect to this holy mountain. Glug! Glug! Blood started to ooze out the majestic holy mountain, which the blood sword drank. Then, the destructive energy fluctuated from the blood sword and frightened everybody. It was the will of eliminating all creatures. This will came from the blood sword, the holy mountain, and from the deep area of this ancient continent. The blood sword and the holy mountain had fused into one. It had triggered some kind of terrifying energy inside the mountain and made it bleed. The blood sword drank the blood from the mountain, which supplied the sword with surging, abundant energy at an unimaginable speed. It seemed to be different from the way Hague drew energy from ancient god continent. Everybody inside the mountain felt their hair rising. It seemed like the holy mountain had just woken up. They felt as horrible as if they were inside the stomach of an ancient beast. This feeling was so real. It was so real that they even found the wall of the mountain twitching like real flesh. Someone couldn't help but shout. They felt their soul get stuck, so they had to try their best to get rid of this place. No one wanted to stay here anymore. Some of them appeared to have collapsed. What happened? Cecilia found this immense world covered with blood and even the viscous blood streaks were found in between the clouds. The smell was so nauseating. She had joined hands with Shang Yingyu to fight MIA. After their times of ascetic cultivation, their god power was more condensed and abundant even though their realm didn't advance. When the two of them joined hands, they could subdue MIA and have time to watch around. When they saw Shi Yang getting rid of Hague's world, they also saw him reappear not far from them with the blood sword floating above his head. Looking at the blood sword, Shang Yingyu showed her fear and respect. However, Cecilia discolored. He's the successor of the bloodthirsty master. Cecilia was aghast. Aside from her, when MIA, Phelps, Wu Feng, Mo Fu, and Shuo Jiao saw the mark on the blood sword, they were dumbstruck and their faces were astounded. Especially Audrey. Her bright eyes showed her shock. Even her soul altar trembled when the big wave of astonishment swarmed over her mind. No matter how hard she had imagined, she would have never known that Shi Yang's inheritance came from the bloodthirsty master. As soon as that man arrived, he had shadowed the 4 great races. He had made the experts of the four races follow him. That man was the pole of the universe. Every member of the four great races knew about an unidentified madman who suppressed the four races to rule this vast cosmos and created a new order. His existence was mysterious and profound, as if he was the law. Haig showed his fear for the first time. He was afraid of this blood sword. Right when it emerged, this blood sword had pierced through his light divine boat and tore the world he had created with great efforts. How strong was that? He gazed at the sword and thought about a new plan. He intended to use the power he had hidden all the time. Standing beneath the blood sword, Shi Yang checked Hassan's situation. He discolored. Hassan had disappeared. To be exact, he didn't see the mess of Hassan's flesh and bones. Not even a single drop of blood. He seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Since everybody saw him turn his head to check Hassan, they also turned to see Hassan. Everybody jolted up in fear and bewilderment. They looked around and tried to find something. They were looking for Hassan's remains. They scanned every corner around and saw no trace of Hassan. They all felt their hair rise. His corpse changed. People were startled. Only Shi Yang knew that it was actually the corpse that changed. Hassan had used corpse chi with an unknown force to resurrect. But where did he go? Shi Yang felt insecure when Hassan didn't reappear. In some aspect, this young man was much tougher than Haig. He was crazier and more unreasonable. With the tremendous power support, he had become deadly dangerous. Bang! The blood sword sent him a strange sound when it suddenly shook and gave Shi Yang a peculiar feeling. His blood sword somehow matched with the energy of the holy mountain. It looked like the sword had just answered the mountain. Shi Yang suddenly understood it. He lifted his head to look at the world tree immersing in the thick clouds and then the guiding fruits. Eventually, his eyes stopped at the Genesis fruit that had the shape of the ancient continent. The Genesis fruit now had a hazy blue halo. That halo. Someone touched it. It was Hassan. Hassan had seized the chance when people were fighting to climb on the world tree and weaved through the guiding fruits. He was standing on the flaming crystal branches to wait for the Genesis fruit to ripen. The Genesis fruit quickly drew the essence power of the world tree. The crystal five-colored streamers moved like beautiful rivers through the branches towards the fruit. All of a sudden, the Genesis fruit shook hard. It seemed like the fruit had just ripened and it was about to fall off the branch. Hassan was waiting right under the fruit. Hassan. Damn it. He's still alive. Everybody boiled up. Their countenances changed in fear. Now they all glared at Hassan with rage. Kang Yun, Haig, and Audrey changed their target in just a blink. They moved like three meteors shooting towards Hassan. They didn't retain anything but they burst out their best and fiercest attack. The three of them had tried their best to snatch the Genesis fruit. With the Genesis fruit in their hands, they could rule the universe for the next 10,000 years. Chapter 1187, Sly Change. Chapter 1187, Sly Change. Seeing Hassan in this world once again had dragged people into their worst nightmares. Each of them was so restlessly insecure. Especially Kang Yun, Haig, and Audrey. They came here for the Genesis fruit and for 10,000 years of prosperity for their clan. For this purpose, they could do anything. However, Hassan was standing right under the Genesis fruit. He just needed to reach his hand out to take the fruit. They would never show mercy. The ice blue halos swirled around the Genesis fruit. It was like the ancient continent was born again with the power of the origin. Shi Yang's co-soul sent him extreme vibes. He looked at the Genesis fruit and couldn't control his excitement. The vitality and energy seething in the Genesis fruit could compare to the total energy of dozens of incipient God realm expert. It was incredible. Nothing in this world, whether it was a matter or a crystal, could reach this level of tremendous energy. If they got the Genesis fruit, they would have the entire world and they could bring their clan back to the glory. It was common knowledge spread out among the four great races. Sizzle. A soft starlight like a ribbon shot to Hassan brought the power of Space Upanishad. Shi Yang was the last one who moved, but he appeared right next to Hassan before Kang Yun, Audrey, or Haig. Talking about speed, who could beat the ones who cultivate space power Upanishad? The Genesis fruit now rippled with ice-blue halos right in front of Hassan. That immense halo had the power to calm down the mind. Shi Yang's hot-tempered state was comforted. He became placid. Standing under the blue halo, Hassan didn't look insane anymore. His eyes became clear as if he had returned to his teenage times before Xian Shan had affected his soul. He looked pure and innocent as if he didn't have a dirty thought. This was who Hassan really was. He looked up at the Genesis fruit and mumbled something faithfully Shi Yang couldn't hear. The Genesis fruit swayed and released more ripples of ice-blue light. It tangled as if it was about to fall off the branch. "Stop him!" Kang Yun, Audrey, and Haig shouted ear-piercingly and asked Shi Yang to stop or even kill Hassan. Everybody could see that the Genesis fruit was about to fall and Hassan was going to take it instantly. Shi Yang remembered what the ring spirit had told him. He knew that the Genesis fruit was crucial. He didn't hesitate or mind Hassan's strange state. He extended one hand crossing over Hassan's shoulder to grab the Genesis fruit directly. Strangely, Hassan still remained in his faithful posture as he kneeled on the tree branch and lowered his head, murmuring something. He didn't stop Shi Yang's move. His eyes were clear like a lake. It seemed like the ice-blue halo of the Genesis fruit had cleaned the evilness in his soul and brought him back to his youth. But Shi Yang still had an extremely insecure feeling. Hassan looked like he was not harmful to humans and animals. He looked so innocent without a dark thought. However, Shi Yang could see that while the young man was murmuring, his body was shriveling. It was the burning purgatory power Upanishad. He was urging his power discreetly. Boom! A pale light shot out of Hassan's head. It wound around Shi Yang's arm like a vine. It was the power that Hassan had urged by burning his soul and body. It had both the death energy and the corpse chi. Shi Yang's arm eroded. Chunks of meat fell off his bones. Shortly after, Shi Yang's arm had only bare bones and even his bones were being eroded. That pale light moved around his arm and reached for his body. Shi Yang felt his hair rising. Everything happened within a blink of an eye. It was so fast that he didn't react timely. When the flesh of his arm fell off, he finally reacted. He immediately urged the co-soul and used the heaven flame to resist that pale light. His co-soul emerged from the soul altar. Hassan's clear eyes brightened. Hassan, who had kept his head low right from the beginning, lifted his head and showed his bright but cold smile. His eyes were now jet black and it showed his brutal, bloodthirsty desire. He looked savage to the utmost. This was the real Hassan. Everything he had just seen was just his disguise. Shi Yang got it. Hassan looked at Shi Yang's co-soul and licked his lips greedily. "I want your origin. You don't have faith. Your mind isn't strong and persistent enough. I should inherit the legacy of the bloodthirsty master. Only the one who had fused with the origin could take the Genesis fruit." Hassan had waited here to hunt the origin. He wanted to use the origin to be eligible to seize the Genesis fruit. Shi Yang had fallen into his trap. Kang Yun, Haig, and Audrey shouted ear-piercingly when the sounds of cracking bones echoed in their chest. Their moving bodies halted in the middle of the air. It seemed like an invisible hand had held them there. Rattle, rattle. The world tree slightly rattled. Its thick branches moved. The massive shade of the tree was like a demon that pressured people's souls. Kang Yun, Haig, and Audrey hurried to stop Hassan, so they had urged their energy to the max level. Divine light flashed continuously in their bodies, but they couldn't get rid of the constraint. They couldn't come close to Hassan and Shi Yang even an inch. From under the tree, Cecilia, Shong Yingyu, and MIA had stopped fighting. They were looking at Audrey, Kang Yun, and Haig being held in the void, and at Hassan and Shi Yang up there with bewildered faces. "It's desolate," Shong Yingyu shouted. She couldn't control her mood as she said, "It has chosen only Shi Yang and Hassan. Only Hassan and Shi Yang have gained its approval, so only they are eligible to fuse with the Genesis fruit." Hearing her, everybody else understood it immediately. In the desert, the icy soul-cold crystal had pierced through Shi Yang's body as he had proactively taken all the damage to save Cecilia and Shong Yingyu, which also helped him get Desolate's approval. Right after that, they found brilliant crystals scattered here and there, including the icy soul cold crystal, the heart water crystal, and even the essence blood crystal, the precious treasure that could recover the body of the immortal demon warriors quickly. Apparently, Desolate had arranged everything when it chose Shi Yang. Hassan was its other choice. After fighting Shi Yang in the desert, Hassan knew the truth of his body. He knew that he wasn't a genuine god warrior anymore. With Xian Shan's bones in his body and the stubborn, wild will of the demon warrior in his soul, Hassan wasn't himself anymore. He had collapsed and wandered like a body without the soul in the desert. He cried and screamed, losing himself. He had fallen into bedevilment. No one knew what Hassan had experienced, but it was true that he had the approval of Desolate. Desolate took care of him. That was how he could reappear here with mightier powers. It was obvious that Hassan had just become a pulp of flesh and broken bones. If he could stand here once again, it wasn't his real power. Everyone knew that Desolate had chosen Hassan too. Shi Yang and Hassan would compete for the Genesis fruit. They were the favored warriors. They had the chance to change the future. Kang Yun, Haig, and Audrey were confined. They couldn't wiggle. It was Desolate's work. This place was the ancient continent and Desolate's kingdom. It could control every one of them. Only Desolate could tie Kang Yun, Haig, and Audrey and make them the audience who couldn't join the competition. Thus, Desolate had thrown them into the trash. It had confirmed that they weren't eligible to keep the Genesis fruit. They were destined to fall into tragedy. No one had continued fighting. Jiao Shan, Shuo Jiao, MIA, and Cecilia had stopped. They wore fearful faces and their vision passed Haig, Audrey, and Kang Yun before fixing on Hassan and Shi Yang. Haig, Audrey, and Kang Yun were the favorite children of God. They were the hope of their clan and the most dazzling generation of this universe. All three of them had fused with the origin. However, these three were the losers in this competition for the Genesis fruit. They didn't even have the right to join the game. Quite the contrary, Shi Yang, a non-famous warrior, together with Hassan the madman, had gained the approval. It was actually out of any warrior's expectation. Be careful. Shang Yingyu suddenly shouted. Hassan was smiling darkly. Black light shot out of his eyes. He wanted to use his soul altar to tie down Shi Yang's co-soul. He wanted to refine the soul that Shi Yang had sealed and carved his soul to make himself the new master of Grace Mainland's origin. Only the warriors of the four great races could fuse with the origin of the ancient continent. Hassan could satisfy this condition. Today, he was even more qualified than anybody else. He had the bones of the immortal demon warrior in his god body. He was a true crossbreed. The pale light of the new power that Hassan had released was the combination of death energy and corpse chi. The flaming origin could stop it for now. Shi Yang's arm didn't have any bit of flesh except for the bone frame. He looked really scary. At the same time, Hassan was trying to attack his co-soul to seize the origin. Unexpectedly, Hassan had gained the upper hand. You should know your situation. Give me the co-soul and the blood vein ring. If I become the successor of the bloodthirsty master, your host soul won't be destroyed. You can choose to follow me too. Hassan looked at Shi Yang and smiled. I'm also one of the candidates who the blood vein ring had chosen. You've taken all the things that belonged to me. Without you, everything would have belonged to me. Only I can receive the inheritance of the bloodthirsty master. You don't have faith. You don't have the fixation on destroying this world. You're not suitable. Hassan laughed wildly. His soul altar released an evil force that sucked Shi Yang's co-soul like a magnet. His co-soul was shaken hard. Gradually, it left Shi Yang's soul altar. The Genesis fruit was ripe. It didn't fall off as some strange force was supporting it and making it float. It was waiting for one of the two, Shi Yang or Hassan, to take it and have the power to change the structure of the world. I had never thought that you would be my rival. Shi Yang had almost lost one arm. However, he didn't look hurt at all. His red eyes were like dripping blood. Looking at his co-soul floating away, he was strangely placid. He didn't take action but closed his eyes. The soul altar emerged from his head. His body quieted down. Hassan also closed his eyes. His soul altar that was connected to his brain flew out just like Shiyang's. Shiyang's co-soul floated between the two soul altars, watching the last competition. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.